we can have some silence, that'd be great. Wow, full room. Welcome. Who here got to have some of the barbecue today? I just want to stop and say thank you to the staff of White City and Randy, our fire chief, for doing the cooking today. Do you want to give him a round of applause? Wonderful. So I'm calling the public meeting to order today, 7 p.m. This is a public meeting pursuant to Section 57 of the Municipalities Act regarding the request for boundary alteration by the town of White City. Just so you know, I can introduce myself. My name is Jolie Engelbrecht. I am a professional facilitator, so a third-party facilitator, so I don't have a stake in the game today. And I just want to let you know about a little bit of information about the facility. There's a ton of people here today, so, you know, if you have trouble finding a seat, please ask a town worker here. And the men's and women's washrooms are just located in the lobby, just down the hallway a little bit. If you require emergency assistance for any reason, please make your way to one of the town staff members who will assist you. And if there's no more seats available and you require seating due to medical issues, please find one of the town staff and seating will be provided to you. These proceedings will have audio and video recording, and they may be made available for public viewing in full or in part, just so you know. So I just want to give you a little bit of information about the meeting. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the following guidelines. Conduct of all persons in the public gallery of the meeting. Public meetings shall refrain from addressing the committee or any presenters unless permitted to do so. We have a lot of speakers tonight. We want to make sure our speakers that registered even in the past by Monday and also tonight are heard. I ask that you maintain quiet and order, especially because there's so many people here. We want to hear what people have to say. Also, refrain from disturbing the proceedings by words, gestures, actions, including applauding, booing, displaying flags, placards, similar material, doing cartwheels, whatever. Okay? Refrain from talking on your cellular telephones. If you need to take a call, please go into the hallway, just like all good meetings. And ensure all electronic devices are on silent and operated in such a manner that doesn't interfere with the meeting. Or another person's ability to hear or view the proceedings. Conduct of the presenters at the public meeting. I'm here to help you all stay focused. We're going to refrain from speaking disrespectfully of the federal government, the provincial government, or another municipal council, and any official representing them. Just please be nice. Using offensive words, not okay. We can't shout, use an immoderate tone, profane, vulgar, or offensive language. It's just not going to be acceptable today, okay? And I would appreciate if you guys monitor each other as well. And if in the event that we have some improper conduct, here's what's going to happen. I will give one verbal warning to any person in the public gallery and let them know about their misconduct. And after one warning, I'll request any person in the public gallery who disturbs the proceedings or acts improperly as set out in the rules of conduct to leave, or they'll be expelled from the meeting. And no person can refuse to leave the meeting today. That's part of the rules of conduct. And by being here, you can accept those. And if a person doesn't follow these rules, I'll just stop the meeting, and that'll be it. And you guys won't hear from everybody. So nobody's going to actually really gain from acting improperly. So with that, we have a presentation from the town regarding the proposal. So I'm just going to introduce the councillors. We have Hal Zorn, Cecil Snyder, and Andrew Boschman. Okay? And so first, we're going to have, for opening remarks, Councillor Hal Zorn.
Thank you, Jolie. It's just amazing that so many folks would show up tonight when the Raptors are playing. So, can you hear me now? I just said the Raptors won. Okay, well, thank you very much for turning out tonight. Thank you, Jolie. Thank you to all the organizers of this place. It's of this particular event. It's been a lot of work to pull this all together. In fact, this has been going on for a long time. And what I'm supposed to do tonight is actually kind of set the table. I know most of you have eaten already, but we're still going to set the table. Now, Randy did the cooking, so later on the whole team will be out there putting the fire out, I expect. So White City is one of the fastest growing communities in Canada. We think that by the time this evening is over, you'll fully understand what we mean by that. Over the past 3 years, our council and staff have undertaken a series of studies to understand the long-term effects of this growth in our community. I guess what we're saying is that we finally woke up and we said, what's going on here? We've got all these people moving in our area, and we don't have a really solid plan that stretches out for the next 25, 30, 40 years to figure out how it's all going to come together. We found that the growth that has occurred in this area will continue at a pace that is well beyond other communities. Action is needed now to coordinate and manage the growth, that is, by even the most conservative forecasts, and our forecasts are very conservative, coming to this community. Based on this work, we developed a proposal, one that lays out a 25-year growth plan for this community as one cohesive urban center. What we have proposed is consistent with other urban municipalities across Saskatchewan and Canada. Our purpose in our proposal for an integrated full-service growth community and our land ask is to ensure that the town can continue to provide services to residents that residents want and need. We need to ensure there is an appropriate land use control and development in the area, ensuring compatibility and addressing the needs of our population. We need to ensure that our community has one representative government that can represent the interests of this urban community. We need to ensure that there is an improved quality of life for our citizens by providing them with enhanced recreational services, protective services, infrastructure, and commercial opportunities. We need to ensure that our community, through the development of a town center, has the appropriate space to serve the interests of the entire urban community. And finally, we need to ensure that competition and decades of dispute between the town and the RM is eliminated in the best interests of all residents and businesses alike. We need this proposal, we presented this proposal last May, notifying our municipal neighbors and the public all at the same time. It's not some backdoor plan or secret attack. It is a proposal, a document that laid out broad issues for all citizens and business alike to encourage discussion. Through our consultation, we have heard the concern of many residents regarding property taxes, zoning, water wells, parking, enforcement of bylaws, and others. We have answered the questions, or we've stated we're prepared to address the concerns, given the processes to be followed by any duly elected government. As we concluded our public consultations last fall, and in all of the community outreach undertaken since, it's apparent that, generally, people feel there needs to be a long-term plan for the future of the community. And they support becoming one community in the interests of a coordinated, cohesive development for the future. Here's some history. For the information of those present, the town has asked for land from the RM 8 times. More recently, once every 3 to 4 years. Requests for annexations were a result of short-term development requirements rather than a long-term approach within our community. So to explain that further, many times we went the annexing route after a developer came forward and asked us to develop land. We didn't use the approach of asking the question, well, where is this going and how are we going to get there? We finally asked those questions, and that's what we're going to be delivering to you tonight. Requests for annexations were a result of, the town's strategic plan. I've got the strategic plan here. I'll show it to you a little bit later. But the town's strategic plan, adopted in early 2017, identified several factors affecting its future and set out a foundation to take a long-term approach to planning. The strategic plan was not developed in a vacuum. It was a result of all kinds of consultation with the public and the community. While developing the strategic plan, we heard from citizens that they wanted an integrated full-service community in which to live. We heard that Emerald Park and White City feel like one community, with many of the participants feeling that the merger between White City and Emerald Park is inevitable as there's no distinction between the two in terms of community feel. There's no distinction between the two if you look at an aerial photograph either. They're all one community. You can't tell where White City starts and Emerald Park ends or vice versa. They both have the same main street, Kingsmere Avenue. They aren't separated by a mountainous range. And the only body of water that we deal with is the mighty Chuka Creek. And it doesn't have much water in it right now. There's nothing separating our communities except logic and common sense. People told us they want to see well-planned managed growth and more provision for green spaces and family-friendly amenities, such as a high school, a recreation center, a pool, indoor track, better access and egress in and out of our community. Wouldn't it be nice if we could invite our family and friends to Emerald Park or White City and not have to drop breadcrumbs all over the place so they can find where we live? Wouldn't it be great? Nobody knows where Emerald Park starts and White City ends. It's very confusing at the best of times. They also indicated that they needed a dedicated policing service that could devote more visible hours at times when we are asleep and motivated offenders are taking advantage of us. We need better protective services all the way around. In the summer of 2017, we undertook a pre-feasibility study to review several structural options to managing growth within the White City region. We consulted with the province and undertook an analysis of approaches to growth in other provinces, particularly BC and Alberta, and reviewed Saskatchewan legislation, local planning authorities, and other municipal consolidations that would hold some promise to resolving the pressures we face today. Of the options reviewed, boundary alteration was the only option that would provide the necessary structure, land base, and legislative authority to address the future growth and development needs of our community. During the past 2 years, the town has undertaken several long-term studies to understand the growth within the area, the long-term land requirements of the town, the fiscal sustainability of the consolidated urban municipality. We have been studying all of this for the past 2 years. These indicate, these are the studies. They're all prepared by experts in the field. This wasn't an ad hoc idea that came forward. In fact, when we started this, we had no idea what our boundaries should look like. It was the experts who identified where the boundaries should be and how they should go. We just knew from the onset, we knew we had a problem. We have significant growth, and we don't have a plan to deal with that significant growth. These are the various studies that we're relying on with our boundary alteration proposal. To put it simply, the time has come for us to be a united urban community and to be governed as one local government to address urban problems and services. We are in a period of growth, and this growth will continue. We need to start now and plan for the future. One of the things we've been doing in White City recently is we've been doing door-to-door door knocks, asking if people support or don't support. We're happy to listen to anybody, the annexation proposal. One of the folks that I knocked on the door of answered the door, and I didn't realize that this particular individual even lived in our community. And he hadn't lived in our community long, and I asked him if he was interested in participating with our process. And his very first words that came out of his mouth was he didn't say, "Hi, Hal, how you doing? What about those Blue Jays?" Anything like that. He said, "It is time." And I thought, wow, we've been doing this for 2 years, and we never took those 3 little words and said, "It is time." It is definitely time. I lived in Emerald Park for 30 years. I've lived in White City for the past 5 years. When we moved to Emerald Park, I had 2 little baby girls. It didn't take long because of the water. I had 5 little baby girls. We said right from the onset we would have a high school. Surely we wouldn't have to rumble our kids down the highway to Belgoni, have them cross that dangerous road every day. Surely something would happen by the time our kids got to high school. Well, my youngest are now 26. We still don't have a high school. Our community is way larger. There isn't a community in Saskatchewan our size that doesn't have a high school. The high school is absolutely crucial for a community. It has been 1 full calendar year since we presented our proposal to the public and the RM. The town has written the RM 8 times requesting to meet to discuss our proposal. During this time, we have met with the RM twice. The first meeting was in August 2018, where we provided a presentation to the RM about the proposal. The RM had no questions, comments for us, and the meeting ended immediately after the presentation concluded. In March 2019, we again met with the RM, this time with a mediator from Saskatchewan Justice present. At that meeting, the RM requested that we make a formal request for complementary resolution for boundary alteration, and we complied on April 30th. They have not responded to that request within the 30 days as specified by provincial legislation. It is disappointing, with all the talk of cooperation, that the RM Council has taken a combative approach to our proposal. If we are truly interested in the future of this community as a whole, if we have both listened with honesty to the support and opposition of residents, and if we are prepared to respect our true mandates as urban and rural municipalities, there would be no need for the campaign of disrespect, negativity, untruths that has now been launched by the RM. So we have a bunch of different things that have come forward from the RM. And the first thing that I want to bring to your attention, and this just, for me, just cut to the bone, completely to the bone. This is a letter to the editor that showed up in, it was the May 30th, 2019 edition of the Quad Town Forum, letter to the editor. So it was an op-ed that was submitted by RM Reeve Mitch Huber. In this first paragraph, he says, "We all know that one person who likes to offer advice. We all know that one person who likes to offer advice even if they don't know what they are talking about. They mean well, but no matter how well-intentioned, their advice is wrong. You politely smile, say thank you, and go about doing things the way they need to be done. That is an incredible statement. I'm surprised anybody would make that's in public service. We are voted in to work with the people. We are voted in to help the people. It's incredible from another perspective. It tells you what the RM thinks of White City Council. We are well-meaning, but no matter how well-intentioned we are, our advice is wrong. We are the person who likes to offer advice even if they don't know what they are talking about. We are that person, according to Mitch. And it's just, to me, it's just mind-boggling that that sort of relationship would be going on at the same time that we're throwing out this word cooperation. It seems to be a complete contrast of what should be happening. We also notice get the facts cards coming out here. We got here, White City doesn't have councillors elected by the area. Emerald Park does. White City, every resident in White City votes for every councillor. Does Emerald Park? I'm not sure. Does it matter? Could we flip-flop? Could we have a ward system after a while? Or would we just keep it at large? Most communities our size are at large. If you get to Regina, they have a ward system. But it's still people looking after the area they were voted to look after. It's not people who are not living in our community that are making the decisions about our community. There's another card that went out. White City has zero experience building a community with a residential, commercial, industrial, and agriculture residents. White City is a full-service community, ladies and gentlemen. Full service. We are a full-service community. But let me just go through some of our amenities. And I'll leave it for the last one as our special amenity. First of all, of course, everyone knows we have 2 schools, which are both busting at the seams. We need another school. We have a post office. We have Demir Industries. We have an excellent staff here, second to none. We provide recreation to this whole community. We've built baseball diamonds. We have 2 football fields. They're all lighted. We have skateboard parks. We have a hockey rink. We have all sorts of amenities for the children and playgrounds. We have a library, which is a big factor for us. But I think the crown and the jewel of our services that we provide are provided by the almost 4,000 people we have living here. And yes, there's no question, from a commercial perspective, we would like to have more services. But when you're providing schools, when you're looking after roads, when you have water services, sewer services, we have a brand new maintenance shop. We have more maintenance equipment than Carter has pills. We are a full service community, regardless of what some of the other people would suggest. And we're not taking a second seat or a back seat to anybody. We are providing the services to our community that all urban communities expect to have, and we would like to provide more of those services. So, how does the RMN expect us to cooperate? Just going to move this off here. How does the RM want us to cooperate when their actions do not match their words? The examples are many, such as the RM withdrew from the White Butte Regional Planning Committee, and they at the same time took steps to disband the White Butte Fire Commission. The RM refused to enhance the RCMP policing services to our community, opted instead for a community safety officer program, and then refused to extend those services to White City residents. The RM refused to work with White City and the Regina Bypass partners to support much-needed dirt for the White City overpass and to support the excavation of the proposed lake and the town center development. In that particular case, the flagmen were in place, the big dirt movers were rolling down the road when White City told us they're not allowing us to cross their roads. The lack of consultation or consideration of White City in the municipal bylaw court initiative is of concern. I personally was at several meetings regarding policing services, and suddenly we learned out of the blue at one of the meetings that there was a bylaw court initiative that we would have loved to work with them on, but none of that came forward. Cooperation issue. The lack of consultation with the town or White City RM number 158 Wastewater Authority on the decommissioning of the Emerald Park lagoons. That was all done without any input from us. The lack of consultation or cooperation with the town on new developments bordering White City boundaries. We received no consultation on those proposals. The RM's refusal to meet or cooperate on outstanding issues related to the 2015 boundary alteration agreement. This is really interesting because the boundary alteration agreement comes up all the time when you speak to the RM. But in fact, we tried several times to meet with them. One of the keynote points in our boundary alteration agreement was to have a planning district. The RM refused to meet with us to develop the planning district. Yet, they say they want to cooperate. The lack of any consultation with the town, the RM's official community plan. They've got a community plan. We have not seen it yet. We have not seen it. It's incredible. This is the coup de grace, though, of all cooperation issues. Most recently, the lack of any consultation on their newly approved cemetery development that threatens the drinking water of over 11,000 people in this area, including the town of Balgony, Pilot Butte, White City, the RM subdivisions of Emerald Park, Spruce Creek, Rock Point, Park Meadows, and Jameson's Estate. We haven't been consulted. You haven't been consulted. You would think that if you were cooperative, you would start the process by having consultations about those issues. Water is pretty important to us. Please understand, what I've provided here represent only a few examples of the manner in which the RM has and continues to cooperate with White City. How can we expect cooperation to be the answer when one side won't even meet with the other? How can anyone expect us to want to cooperate when we, as a town, as a staff, as a council members, and individuals are being painted so negatively by the RM? The RM has published a document. We've got many studies, many documents. This is the RM documents, 8 pages, and it identifies a bunch of misleading statements, untrue statements, and a lot of fear-mongering in 8 pages. There's nothing cooperative about this. There is nothing forward-thinking about it. There is no plan in place. This is it. 8 pages, nice glossy book. Lots of got you statements, but that's where it stops. Our council is frustrated. So are the residents of the general community. They want quality infrastructure and services. They want the amenities usually offered in a community this size. When I look around at the other communities our size, I see amenities that we should have right here in our community. It's time. It's time to end. It's time. It's time to end the decades of disputes. It's time to end repeat subdivision by subdivision annexation requests, which will continue if this is not dealt with now. It's time to allow this community to come together, to live, work, and play as the friends and neighbors we are. The council and staff of White City have brought forward a plan and a vision for the community. We have been open and transparent about the plan. The plan is available to all of you to read. We have tried to be positive, visionary, forward-thinking, and considerate of the concerns raised because we believe in this community and believe that it is time we come together as one community. We have made everyone, including the RM, aware of the proposed timelines and asked on numerous occasions for dialogue with the RM. We believe there's a better way to achieve the rationale for growth in the area, a better way to provide effective and efficient services for residents, a better way to ensure fair representation and equitable taxes and provide the services that people need and want in the White City area. That way is one governance model for an urban community of almost 6,000 people. We believe that we are stronger together by being one community with one voice. I invite you for the rest of the evening to listen very carefully. I hope we won't get any more outbursts of interruptions like that. Listen. I invite you to listen. I invite you to listen very carefully to everybody before you come to any conclusions. We've got a team of specialists that are going to explain how we ended up where we ended up, so listen carefully. Thank you very much. Yeah,
All
thank
right,
you very much.
thank you, Val. I have one more sheet from you.
Oh, here's right here.
Awesome, thank you. Great. All right. Oh, he's way taller than me. All right, so we have to stay within the boundaries that we open the meeting. Just so you know, we have a lot of speakers registered tonight. We have 19 that registered by Monday, and we have more that registered at the door. So so we need to get through everybody, okay? All right, our next speaker is Maggie Schwab, and she's going to talk about the future growth study. You ready, Maggie? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, good evening. My name is Maggie Schwab. I'm a community planner at Crosby, Hanna and Associates. Sorry, can you hear me now? Is that a little better? So I'm a community planner at Crosby, Hanna and Associates. We're a community planning and landscape architecture firm based primarily out of Saskatoon, although we do have an office in Regina as well. And I'd like to thank you for having me here this evening. So a bit of background information. We were retained by the town of White City to undertake a future growth study to review the need for additional lands over a 25-year time horizon. The land needs analysis we undertook was based on population projections prepared using a historical growth rate of 5.12%, which is the 25-year growth rate. For comparison purposes, the Statistics Canada growth rate is 9.85% for the 5-year trend and 10.24% for the 10-year trend. What we did with this 5.12% growth rate, though, is that we applied it as a declining growth scenario. While it's customary to use compounding growth rates to project the future population of a municipality, it's much more realistic to employ a declining growth rate. Declining growth rates achieve the same overall average annual growth, but they utilize higher growth percentages in the early years and lower growth percentages towards the end of the projection period. So you'll see the implications of a declining growth rate versus a compounding growth rate on the next slide. Based on the resulting population projections, as well as a review of the existing municipal land base, it was concluded that the municipality does not have a sufficient supply of land to meet present-day growth demands over a 25-year time horizon. What we did is we also applied the same growth potential to the existing subdivisions surrounding White City. You can see the implications of a declining growth scenario in the red. So compared to the Statistics Canada trends, which are the top two projections, which illustrate the compounding growth rates of 9.85% and 10.24% respectively. What I want you to take away from this is that we took a very reasonable and realistic approach to projecting the future population of White City, as well as the surrounding residential subdivisions. Based on the population projections for White City and surrounding established residential developments, we projected the land needs for residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional land uses. In order to predict the land needs, we used per capita requirements of 13.6 acres per 1,000 people for commercial development, 21 acres per 1,000 people for industrial development, and 7.4 acres per 1,000 people for institutional development. For residential development, we assumed low-density residential development would continue at a density of 2 dwelling units per acre, which is currently being utilized in White City. And higher density development would occur at a density of 16.3 dwelling units per acre. Moving forward, we also assumed that residential development would occur at a rate of 50% being allocated to low-density residential development and 50% to the higher density residential development. Following this exercise, we concluded that not only is the land base not sufficient for the town's growth needs, but the town is deficient today in land suitable for industrial development purposes. The town will also use up their surplus of commercial land by 2027 in the town center. Lastly, the town will use up their available land base for residential development before 2030. Again, it's noted that we took into consideration both lower and higher density residential development opportunities. So when we applied these growth rates and these assumptions, we illustrated what the land base would look like as a potential unified municipal boundary. This land would provide for an accommodated population or total growth population of 16,624 people over the 25-year period. So this is the proposed unified municipal boundary that would accommodate the 25-year growth needs of White City and surrounding residential communities. Now, with respect to the land itself, we identified to accommodate this future growth, we looked at 2 main categories, including development priority considerations and environmental vulnerability considerations. Development priority considerations included existing land shortfalls, transportation, so we're talking about access to major corridors, efficient connectivity, growth of the community, adjacent land use compatibility, existing and potential services, so the potable water network system and capacity and sewer network system and capacity, stormwater infrastructure, legislated setbacks from wastewater treatment facilities or lagoons, and setbacks from railways. With respect to environmental vulnerability considerations, we looked at existing conservation easements, environmentally sensitive land, including existing water bodies and wetlands, ground elevations, potential for unstable slopes, and high-quality agricultural lands. Based on all these factors, it can be seen that there are a number of development limitations adjacent to the town. Upon application of these development constraints, including legislated setbacks, it was concluded that future growth in the White City area needs to take these limitations into consideration. You can see these orange blobs. They illustrate legislated setbacks from either wastewater treatment facilities, railways, or existing water bodies. There's also an existing conservation easement to the south and the east of the town. Lastly, within the study, we recommended a sequence in which the unified municipality build out or stage future development. This map graphically illustrates the land consumption for the unified municipality in groups of 5-year periods. You can see the navy blue goes from 2018 to 2025, purple is from 2026 to 2030, pink is from 2031 to 2035, beige is from 2036 to 2040, and yellow is from 2041 to 2045. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Maggie. All right, next we have Les Cook is up next. Les? And he's going to present on the governance analysis, strategic vision, and property tax comparison.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Les Cook, and it's actually going to be a two-person presentation. My colleague, Rob Woodward, and I are going to kind of split this. It'll go quite smoothly, I can assure you. Rob and I are both individual consultants that work out of Regina with a long history in working in provincial, municipal, and federal governance. We've been involved in this process right from the onset. And so we want to, in their presentation, provide you with the perspective that we've gained through the last 2 years of working with the community. Our participation has extended from being involved in the initial process of looking at what was available to the town and the community at large in terms of looking at how to proceed through an amalgamation and the acquisition of sufficient land for growth. We've also were the couple that developed the strategic vision for the community, which we'll get into in quite a bit more detail here in the presentation. And lastly, we've been involved on a continuing basis as the community has worked its way through all of the steps that are set out in terms of completing the boundary alteration. Our presentation is going to look basically at three things. The analysis of the go-forward options that we looked at the beginning of the process with the town council, the preparation of the strategic vision document. I'm sorry, I neglected to move on. The preparation of the vision document, which has become the core document for really all of the activity that we've been undertaking related to the proposal. And lastly, we did a comparison of the property taxes for 2017. Rob?
Good evening. The first project that we looked at was one where we were determining the course of action for the community to take. This assessed the options for different ways to accomplish boundary adjustment on behalf of the community. 3 options were looked at for amalgamation and incorporation to meet sufficient land requirements for the long term. First is the traditional boundary adjustment or annexation process. Second is the creation of a municipal district. Third would be the provision and proposal of special legislation to support a custom-made solution for the community. The report also identified the way forward based upon our recommended approach to council. The 3 options broke down as follows. The boundary alteration approach is well-defined, it has legislated precedents, it has a large body of action behind it supporting activities. It simply needs a joint resolution between councils to move forward. It is a quasi-judicial process that allows for decision-making if intermunicipal agreement is not forthcoming. The second approach is new. It is the creation of a municipal district. It's been recently incorporated in the province of Saskatchewan and has as yet been untested. There are no precedents in the province right now, and examination of the the framework that's in place at the provincial level leads one to conclude that it's really been put in place to allow for small communities to absorb into RMs where there's a declining population, not a population based upon growth. Legislative change looks to argue for special circumstance. It's a lengthy process with uncertain outcome and requires preparation of special materials for cabinet and cabinet consideration. There's a lot of uncertainty around this process. Our conclusion and recommendation to council was that they move forward with the traditional boundary alteration process and to move into an examination of what the strategic approach and outcomes for the region should be.
I'm now going to take you quickly through a document that is really the foundational document for the other studies that have been completed, including the work that Maggie's firm did and the work that you'll hear about later in terms of the financial impact analysis. The starting point for this work is that if there's an old saying that says, if you don't know which road to take, any road will do. And that's somewhat the history surrounding these communities. And so what we set out to do, and council was very supportive of this, was to lay out a vision. What should this community look like in the next 25 years? And what we've done is really start with by examining what we have at the present time and then looking at what a community that in fact would be a city would look like if all of this came to pass. So we prepared the vision for the future. The council provided the public with all kinds of opportunity to look at this, and in fact that document is available on the website, on the One Community, One Voice website, and I would strongly recommend that anybody that wants to understand what the community is looking to become should take the time to look at that document. The next thing I want to mention to you are things that I believe Councillor Zorn has already covered in part. Today, nearly 6,000 people live in the area that is proposed for the annexation. The benchmark for a city in the province of Saskatchewan is 5,000. That's important to remember that. The medium growth forecasts, and I want to emphasize medium growth, I think others have mentioned, that all of the forecasting done in all of our studies, we were directed to be very conservative, and we've done that. The population projection for a medium growth forecast would see 22,000 people living in this community by the end of the 25-year period. We know that access improvements over the last several years will make a difference in terms of the growth of the community. I mean, I live in Regina, and I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, I read in the Leader Post of you folks taking up the issue about the unsafe access to come and leave your community. This area is a contiguous urban area. Again, Hal's covered that. I mean, again, when we first looked at, the aerial material for our work, I mean, we couldn't have picked the boundary line between the two communities if you'd given us a week to study it. It just doesn't exist. It's a single urban community. The current governance does not provide an equal voice for all the residents, and that again was an issue that we were asked to address as we looked at the vision. If there's anyone that thinks that the community has seen its best growth, you need to think again. I mean, everything that we looked at in our studies said that the growth rate, while it will never stay at what it's been for the last decade, which by the way is over 10% per annum for the last decade, fastest growing town in Canada. So do we expect that to continue? Perhaps not. But we need to understand that what you've got here is a very attractive lifestyle. And one of the absolute core directives given to Rob and I was that that lifestyle has to be protected and encouraged at all costs. And so we've clearly built that into the vision. It's built around the larger, more affordable lots. We also know now, again, with the improved highway access, that for some people that was seen as a barrier, and we think that barrier is all but gone now. there's no question that the community is on the brink of requiring major investments in new services and facilities. I mean, I don't want to repeat the things about the schooling system, the swimming pool, whatever it is. And it's not just the new facilities. You're at a point in your growth cycle where can the community really live much longer with one arena? Everything needs to grow to keep up with, I'm talking about the services now, to keep up with the community. The other thing is that you're at the size now where you're going to start to see an attraction for what we call the personal and commercial services. We're not talking here about big box stores or anything like that. We're talking about the kind of boutique stores. We're talking about, accountants and doctors and dentists and lawyers and things like this. The personal service component really needs to grow along with the community. The new town center is a very important big step in terms of creating the kind of community for the future. Because what it does is it's going to add a broader range of accommodation. And again, it's not at the expense of that core lifestyle that you all came out here to enjoy. But the truth of it is, when I look out over the audience, and please don't be offended by this, I see a lot of gray hair. And when you get to be 65, or my age, 72, and you say, I raised my family out here, I'm living in a 3,500 square foot house, I want to stay in the community, what do? Where do I live? And that's another thing that we've tried to address in the vision document. We also know that throughout the area that we're looking at, there are excellent opportunities for increases in regional economic growth. Where the community is situated in relation to Regina provides obvious advantages for certain kinds of businesses. Those wanting to service southeastern Saskatchewan, those wanting good access to the highway without having to drive through a city, they're going to be attracted to this community. That didn't work. There we go. So what we developed was the case for a municipal consolidation and the creation of a full-service growth center. So what we have today is a large unincorporated urban area immediately adjacent to and indistinguishable, at least to us, from the town of White City, surrounded by a series of commercial and country residential developments. And if you look in the strategic vision document, one of the items in there shows the changes in land use decade by decade since the 1950s. And I'd encourage you to look at that, and you'll understand then why there's a concern about why we don't have the comprehensive plan for the whole of this area. If that pattern continues, in our estimation, there's trouble ahead. There's trouble ahead. Suboptimal land use, you're going to run into infrastructure issues, access issues. A comprehensive plan is a must. Rapid growth, the absence of an overall governance system, and the lack of comprehensive planning are major issues. The population of this community supports its designation as a city. And again, I don't expect everybody would want to pay necessarily a lot of attention to that right now, but you should know that a city has considerably more local autonomy. It has much more authority to make local decisions without reference to people that live outside the community, and in particular the provincial government. And that's not a criticism of the provincial government, where I worked for many, many years. The situation, in our estimation, is inconsistent with the provincial legislation. Legislation identifies rural municipalities and urban municipalities. This community is an urban community. And we, in our estimation, and our recommendation is that it should be governed as a single urban community. And all of the economic, financial, and land use analysis supported what we had laid out in that vision document. There are some, as you're looking at the future, there are some key strategic interests that need to be attended to. I mean, again, this isn't a business of just saying, let's just kind of continue rolling along. The whole idea of developing a vision document is to give you something to look forward to. And in the process of doing that, to think out what are the elements we want to see in our community. So we developed, these are kind of, you might say they're a little bit trite sort of bylines, but we said the community has got to be intelligent, it's got to be distinctive and unique, and it's got to be representative. And we feel that the foundation is there to create a model integrated full-service community. first element is an intelligent community, and this obviously revolves around the comprehensive planning that's been so strongly emphasized tonight. It's urgently needed. You're on the cusp of decisions being made that will affect the long-term nature of your community, and there just really isn't time to waste in terms of developing that comprehensive approach, not just to the land use plan, but to the whole service provision. What public services do you want? What commercial services do you want? We need to be concerned about cost effectiveness. I mean, you hear this with every urban municipality in the province. If you don't do the infrastructure planning properly, you're going to end up paying in the long run. So everything is set up for the growth to continue and to be intelligent in nature. A distinctive and unique community. I've already mentioned that we were directed to focus on retaining the lifestyle and to see it continue and expand into the future. But we also saw the need for a fuller range of housing options and took steps to incorporate that in a sensitive way inside of the overall community future. We do see the need for the commercial and personal services sector to grow rapidly and soon. And lastly, we think that the country residential lifestyle, which I know a number of people had raised as a concern, we see no reason at all why that country residential lifestyle can't be retained inside of the new community. Lastly is the representative community. And again, I'm not a politician and I have no intention of becoming one, but the truth of it is that the governance model for this community is, to say the least, muddled. I mean, you do not have a cohesive single perspective on what this community of 6,000 plus people should become. And that is a significant issue in our estimation, and you'll see that reflected in the vision document. The one community, one voice, regardless of history, in terms of looking forward and being able to develop the comprehensive plan and the services you require, is going to be essential to have a new, well-defined and single governance model. Again, I know that there are issues, people can speak to and fro it, around the democratic representation issue, and I don't need to get into that. Mr. Zorn has already spoken to it, and I'm sure others are going to speak to it as well. The last slide on the vision deals with the steps to implement the vision. Council endorsed the strategic vision in 2018 and directed that it form the basis for the other studies, for the work that Crosby-Hanna did on future land use and the work that Corvus did on looking at the financial side of the picture, which we know everybody is keenly interested in. The council commissioned 3 studies after we were finished the vision. The first was to take and look at property tax between the two communities. We know that pocketbook issues are critically important to people. So Rob will speak to that in just a minute, but we undertook a comparison of the property tax situation in the 2 areas that constitute the proposal. And we were contracted to do that. Crosby-Hanna, you've already heard from, did the future land use study, and you're going to hear from Greg in Corvus about the financial implications and sustainability of that kind of a community. With that, Rob's going to give you a quick overview of the property tax comparison that we conducted.
Thank you, Les. Very quickly, we did a side-by-side comparison of the property tax rates between what at that time was the area being looked at and the tax base that is in place now in White City. We used the White City's 2017 tax policies and the SAMA data, which is readily and publicly available, and coordinated all of the information through municipal offices at White City. Overall, there would be a 7.3% reduction in taxes that is spread discontinuously across different property types. Residential, all in all, about a minus 1.1% change in taxes between the before and the after scenarios. Commercial sees the largest change in taxes with a potential decrease of 16.8%. We also took care to address what would happen and take place to the agricultural properties during a boundary alteration process, and the taxes for the agricultural land base would be held harmless. In other words, there would be no change on the taxes assigned to agricultural lands. Country residential would see a 3.9% reduction in taxes. That's a very quick overview of the taxes. It led into a lot more of the detailed analytics, which will be discussed in a minute through Corvus. What we see is a strategic vision that paints the future for a community that's got huge potential. The growth that's taking place out here is second to none in Canada. The opportunities that are here are second to none in Canada as well. The vision document defined what that future could look like with three basic principles around how that end vision or how the growth can be accommodated and best managed over the next 25 years, and how everything can really be capitalized on here to improve the lifestyle of all of the residents that are here today and the residents that are expected to come in the future. Studies by sector experts have validated the direction that you've heard here today and have informed council decision all the way along. And I guess to close, we see growth that's happening in and around the largest city in Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, being supported by two large and growing and vibrant cities that are on the outskirts of Saskatoon. And we see no reason why that same sort of development opportunity, irrespective of a decision to be or not be a city by name as a city, there is the population here, and that population will establish itself here over the next 25 years that can deliver to this part of the province the same opportunities that Warman and Martensville are delivering in and around Saskatoon. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so next up, we have the financial impact assessment. So we have Greg Weiss to speak to you today from Corvus Business Advisors. Greg?
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me tonight in White City. My name is Greg Weiss. My company's name is Corvus Business Advisors. We were retained by the town to undertake the financial impact assessment associated with the proposed annexation. What I'd like to do, first of all, is just talk a little bit about the methodology that we use to undertake the financial impact assessment. Just like the growth study, our review was taken with a 25-year outlook in mind. Now, annexation doesn't happen right away, so we assumed a start point of 2021, basically 3 years, a stub year period at the start to go through the annexation process, and then a 25-year review period from 2021 to 2045. Now, one of the roles that we as financial folks have when we present our materials to quasi-judicial boards like the Saskatchewan Municipal Board is, one of our roles is to ensure that the plan that the municipality has can sustain change. Plans are not going to stay the same as they are at the outset. They are going to change. And so they have to be robust enough to withstand that change. And so for that reason, we build in overly conservative assumptions into our analysis. For example, when costs are provided, we assume that those costs are going to inflate. We've built into our analysis 3% inflation on those costs, even though the average annual inflation rate as it relates to construction is below that number at this point in time. Our forecast of how assessment will grow is based on a rate of just 1.25%, meaning assessment values in our analysis are forecast to grow 1.25% each year. I contrast that with what has happened actually in White City since 2011. That growth rate has been more than 4 times that amount. Contingencies. One of the most significant conservative assumptions that we've included, in addition to the costs that are built into our analysis, we've included a contingency of $17.5 million. That's to be able to handle any unplanned or unforeseen additional costs or services that might be required in the town. And finally, as it relates to debt, even though in the future the town, should it become a city at some point in time, could apply to have its debt limit increased, we have maintained that debt limit for the purposes of our analysis at the point that it's at now. I also should say that all of the capital and operating plans that you see, not just in our financial impact analysis, but all financial impact analysis of this type, are generic in nature. They don't represent or reflect approved council policies or changes. They look forward 25 years, so they're a generic plan. What were some of the key ingredients that were included in our analysis? Let me take you through those now. The analysis includes a capital plan of about $147 million over the next 25 years. That's $147 million in today's dollars. When you apply inflation to those cost estimates, the actual figure contained in our analysis is nearly $229 million. The operating costs that are built into our plan are forecast to increase from year 1, 2021, at about $10 million, nearly 7 times larger 25 years later to about $70 million in 2045. And that includes not just services that the town offers today, but potentially new services that the town would offer as it grows as a community. The operating revenues obviously will grow as well, from about $3.8 million in the year 1 to about $31 million in year 25. And all of that boils down to a tax requirement that grows from about $6 million in year 1 up to nearly $39 million in year 25. That is an increase of about 6-fold. Even though the population over that time period is forecast to grow about slightly less than 3 times, the tax requirements we have included in our analysis are forecast to grow approximately 6 times, or double that amount. That's another level of conservatism that we have built into our analysis. Though it's the numerator of the equation. On the denominator of the equation, when you're talking about taxes, is assessment. I've already talked about the assumptions there, and those result in an assessment growth in the town of about $1.35 billion in year 1, up to about $4 billion in year 25. And we do all of that in order to be able to assess the tax impacts that are going to occur over that time frame. Now, before I describe what those tax impacts are, it's always nice to be able to compare them to something. And so we establish a threshold. If we see tax rates creeping above that threshold, we have concern. If we see tax rates or increases below that threshold, we're comfortable. And what is that threshold? We have set it at just 3%, and that's a relatively low number when it comes to municipal tax increases. I'm sure many of you here would be saying, well, gosh, can't a municipality handle tax increases greater than 3% in any given year? And the answer is yes, of course they can. But over a sustained period of time, year after year after year, we do not want to see tax increases above that mark. And so that's the sustainability threshold that we've established. And in this analysis of the town of White City, over the next 25 years, the forecast tax increases are forecast to be anywhere between about 2.3% to 2.8%. Tax increases is one element of financial impact. The other element is debt. White City, like all municipalities in the province of Saskatchewan, has to stay within a legislated debt level, and that level is 1 times eligible revenue. And so as you can see on this particular slide here, that red line going across there, that is the 1 times eligible revenue level. That's the debt limit for the town of White City. It's currently at, or in year 1, it was forecast to be at about 71% of that level, and it will climb and sneak up to about 95% of that level, and then decline. In year 25, it finishes off at just about 17% of that level. Now, you notice on that graph, there's another dotted red line above that. If at any point in time that the town becomes a city and applies to have that debt level increased up to some other level, well, then obviously those percentages would decline. But for the purposes of this analysis, we held it at that level that it's at today. The impacts on the RM. It's important to recognize that annexations are not an opportunity for one municipality to extract an arbitrary or large sum from another municipality. And by the way, that transfer of funds, there's some fancy terms that they like to use. You may have heard the term financial restitution. You may have heard the term financial mitigation. Basically, all of that means just a flow of funds from one municipality to the other. And by the way, that flow can happen in either direction. It does not necessarily need to be from the municipality that is annexing to the municipality that has lands that are being annexed. It can flow the other way. It all depends on what the situation is and what the actual damages are. And I know, and I have seen sort of a lot of commentary around your situation here that focuses a lot on taxes that are lost. Taxes that are lost are one piece of the calculation, but they are not the only piece. When you determine the financial impact on one community, here are the general elements that you include in that analysis. You include something that we refer to as ongoing or annual financial impacts, and you also include things that are one-time financial impacts. Those annual financial impacts, yes, they include the taxes that are lost from the municipality, but when a municipality cedes a piece of land from one community to another, it loses the taxes that were once gathered from those lands, but it also sheds a bunch of expenses. No longer does that municipality have to provide recreational services to that land. No longer does it have to plow the roads, sand the roads, provide fire services. There is a whole hockey sock of costs that are shed when land moves from one municipality to the other. And so that's the other side of the equation that is also factored in here. One-time financial impacts include things that we refer to as stranded assets or stranded costs. So if there happens to be a road that a municipality built in those annexation lands, and there happens to be a debt, a loan on that road, and that road moved from one municipality to the other, it would be very unfair for the debt to remain behind. The debt should also follow that asset to the new municipality, and that's what a stranded asset is. Likewise, there could be stranded liabilities. If there is a land site, for example, a land that requires reclamation, like a landfill, then there is a liability. And that liability is the offset. It's the opposite thing that must be dealt with by that municipality before that land is transferred. The point is that all of those elements come into play when determining financial impact. If there is a net loss, when you factor all of these elements in, then financial restitution may be required. When we did our original analysis last year in 2018, many of these elements were not known, and they remain not known today. And so we can't determine what the financial impact is yet. Once the two municipalities agree finally on what those lands are, and the key information as it relates to those lands, what's stranded, what's not stranded, is brought to bear, then that financial impact can be determined. I understand that there's been a whole host of sort of questions, many of these that the town has received from various people, and so I wanted to address some of those questions as takeaways for you. One of those questions was, has White City considered all of the costs that are required to support the annexation and growth? For example, recreation facilities, the town center, staffing increases and the like, and the answer is yes. All of the capital and operating requirements for the town are included in the financial analysis. And most importantly, in addition to those costs, there is an additional $17.5 million contingency that is built into the analysis. Will annexation result in significant tax increases for the town or for annexation area residents and businesses? The answer is no. As you've already heard, the analysis that Robin Les talked about that was undertaken in 2018 showed that for at least for annexation area residents, on day one, there would on average be a tax reduction of about 7.3% across all of those different types. Going forward from there, what I have described here, the tax increases are forecast to increase from that point anywhere from 2.3 to 2.8% per year. Another question received is will there be oversight of the town's debt limit going forward? And the answer is absolutely. The debt limits for all municipalities are approved by the Saskatchewan Municipal Board, and all municipalities are required by legislation to operate within those debt limits, even if the town were to become a city at some point in the future. Another question that the town's received is, will water and sewer rates increase for residents in the annexation area? Well, the town, I don't know if you're aware or not aware, but the town is not planning to assume any of the water or sewer assets of the RM. Services to existing annexation area customers would continue to be provided by the RM. Therefore, any rate changes in the future would be entirely dependent upon what the RM chose to do. Is tax loss compensation always required in annexation? And I hope you know the answer to this now. The answer is no. Tax loss is only one component of financial impact. Another question the town had received was, will compensation to the RM be 15 to 22 times tax loss? And I think that number was about $38 million. And the answer is no. Compensation, if any, would be based on the mitigation of damages, which include not only taxes lost, but the expenses shed, etc., that I had mentioned earlier. Does financial restitution include the net book value of all of the assets that are transferred from one municipality to the other? And the answer is no. Only stranded assets are limited to those that are transferred where the RM continues to hold a payment obligation. As I explained earlier, an ongoing debt or debenture. And then finally, can that compensation amount be determined today? The answer is no. The annexation area must be finalized between the parties, and then the information that, as it relates to those lands provided, like stranded assets and costs and the like. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. So next we have the town manager, Ken Culp, and he's going to talk to us about a process update.
Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give you a really quick update on where we're at in the process. Let's go back to, oh, that's the wrong one. Yeah, can we get the other one up? Anyways, we went through a full year of consultation, and that was part of our timeline. The next step that we're at in the timeline now is a formal application to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board, or a request to the RM for complementary resolution. We received word today from the RM that they will not provide a complementary resolution. So that then means that we are now, so that means that, as part of the meeting tonight, will form part of the record, and it will form part of an application that will go towards the SMB, because it's now considered to be an application that would be one that is not approved, basically, by the RM. So that's where we're at. The meeting we're having here tonight is part of the process that we're required to go through by legislation to hear from the community with respect to the proposal. And tonight we'll hear from many of you with respect to your thoughts on the proposal. And again, that will form part of the record that goes towards the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. So that's my update from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, so the next part of the proceedings are presentations. Now, just a few rules, because I'm all about the rules tonight. With public presentations, I really expect the room to afford everybody the same courtesy you afforded our opening speakers. Each speaker, these are the ones that have pre-registered before June 3rd. Each speaker that pre-registered before June 3rd gets 5 minutes to speak, okay? They need to clearly state their name and civic address, and if I can't understand it, I might ask you to repeat it, please. They're going to be allowed 5 minutes. Now, with the 5 minutes, it's hard to tell when you're at 5 minutes, so we're going to actually have a timer up here so you can actually see the 5 minutes. When there's 30 seconds left, I'm going to give you a sign as well, okay? After the 5 minutes, you're expected to stop speaking. We have 19 pre-registered speakers tonight, plus people who registered at the door, so we're going to be here a long time, so we need to keep that time condensed, okay? They will be able to present their response to the proposal. If the presenter has completed their verbal submission before the allotted time is completed, they'll let the facilitator know and they will forfeit the remainder of their time, okay? So if you only need 3 minutes, that's totally fine, just let me know. At such time that the presenter has completed their verbal submission or their allotted time has expired, the Boundary Alteration Committee may ask questions only for clarification on the points. And then the presenter may then respond to the questions or provide clarification to the specific points as asked, but may provide no further presentation that isn't relevant to the actual question, and I ask that you keep it short. Okay, we have a lot of people to get through tonight. And then afterwards, after we get through our 18-19 presentations, then the presenters who registered at the door will be able to speak, and they'll be each given 2 minutes. Okay? All right, so with that, if you're all ready,
Change the agenda.
Okay.
So the councillors from White City are gonna wait until all the public has had their opportunity to speak, including the ones that haven't registered. And then at the end, they'll speak.
Bruce told me that he will, but I don't know. So these.
This one, and this one will wait until the public has had their chance to speak.
All right, so with that, we're gonna start with Ann Panter. Can you come up to this mic right here, Ann? Yes, thank you.
It's facing, can anybody hear it that way? Oh, so facing that way? All right, looking at you folks. That's much better. I like that much better. Okay. Can that be heard? That's not on. Okay. Number 1, where's the button? There we go. Do I have to hold that? Okay. Yeah, speak right in. Okay, there we go. Right, okay. First of all, yes, Ann Panter. I'm from 15 Hogan Place, Emerald Park. And I would like to state at the outset, I am a resident of Emerald Park, and I am very much in favor of this One Community, One Voice initiative. We've heard some very high-level reasons. Mine is a much more personal one. My reasons are briefly representation, coordinated planning, and as anyone who has looked at the map of this community would add, just plain common sense. Emerald Park is an urban community within a rural municipality. Though we have about 40% of the population, whoops, sorry, I'm losing that there. Okay. We have just one voice on a council, so in practice, we have no control over decisions made about our community. Got it? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The other side of that equation, the majority of councillors do not live in this community, so they are making decisions which don't directly affect them. An egregious example of this was a decision by council to rezone property for a huge care home in spite of unanimous objection from all adjoining property owners and a 300-plus signature petition objecting to the rezoning. Now, just to clarify, the objections were not about having a care home in the neighborhood, just the location. There are much better locations for it without having to change zoning. That experience motivated a group of Emerald Park residents to start looking at ways to have better representation on municipal council. The first option was a division boundary realignment, changing the boundaries to better represent the community. That obviously did not improve matters. That 40% figure I just mentioned is after boundary realignment. The next option was to separate Emerald Park from the RM. And unfortunately, the only legal way to do that, we were told, was that we had to ask White City to annex us. Because Emerald Park borders White City, there wasn't a possibility of forming a separate entity. And why would we want to? Anybody looking at a map can see this is one continuous urban community. This addresses the representation issue. Would we all be represented by councillors elected at large who actually live here? Over the past few weeks, I have discussed this with many people in the community. The majority of people I spoke to said it's about time. Of those who disagree, there seem to be two reactions: fear and hostility. The hostility I could understand, and I emphasize most of these people were very polite, but to many Emerald Park residents, this is seen as a hostile takeover by White City. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, it's the only legal option. By the way, I also heard a litany of old grudges going back 30 years, and this is a golden opportunity to put all that behind us. The fear is also understandable. People have heard rumors their taxes will skyrocket, their water bills will double, the sky will fall. They say the RM has been very good to us, they provide excellent services. Why change? It ain't broke, don't fix it. However, it is broke. We have an urban community with no democratic voice. We have two municipalities making separate, uncoordinated planning decisions, and we have two separate but contiguous communities with common needs and goals, unable to make use of their combined populations to benefit the residents. Cooperation is obviously not an option. With apologies to Paul Newman, what we have here is a failure to cooperate. Regardless, cooperation does not address the issues of democracy or community. Finally, a comment I heard many times was, this will happen eventually. Sadly, it can't just happen. Again, the only legal way to unite this community is for White City to annex Emerald Park. And that's why we have to support this initiative and make it happen. We are one community. Let's make it official. No more us and them. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. All right, and just a reminder, if you're up here speaking, to put your mouth right near the microphone. Our sound guy can turn you down better than he can make you louder. So our next presenter is Roy Beloff.
Okay, Roy Beloff, Box 88, White City. I'm not a professional speaker, but I got a couple of things I want to bring up. This go-around with annexation and the problems in this community did not start last year or 2 years ago or 10 or 20 years ago. This started in 1959 when there was a few houses sitting here and the people wanted to form a hamlet because they were unhappy with the way their tax dollars were being spent by the RRM. So they approached the RRM to form a hamlet. The RRM says no. So they went to court, they won, and they had their hamlet. And from there, it went to a village, to a town, and here we are. Now, there were some people that had a vision for the future, and that's where we are today. The RRM does not see that same vision, and that's why we have the problem we have. The sign outside of town reads, "Cooperation, not annexation." Wow, that is terrific. I like that. But there's no cooperation, there's no communication from the RRM. I was in the RRM till approximately 3 years ago, till they traded me and my property for other land that the town wanted to develop. But there wasn't a phone call, there wasn't a letter, there wasn't anything that said, we're going to talk to you, we're going to make this change. So, and this wasn't the first attempt, this was the second attempt. And people have said to me, why do you want to go with that? I said, you're not wanted. I don't need the door slammed in my face more than once. And I went twice. So there is no cooperation, no communication from the RRM. Now, we talk about growth. And Jana got up at a meeting and said, 2,300 acres, what a large amount of land, the White City will never use it, blah, 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 goes on and on. Right. Let's go back 25 years ago and let's look at farmsteads. How big were farmers back then? 600, 1,000 acres, 1,200 acres. Now they're running tens of thousands of acres, each one of them. But we're not going to give the town room to spread. Why? They got the right to spread. We're going to house in the neighborhood of 22 to 25,000 people on 2,300 acres, and there's farmers that are farming tens of thousands of acres and 4 or 5 people on that farm. Just trying to put things in perspective. And there's farmers that have 100, 150 quarters of land. That's okay, but the town can't grow because we said it can't. It's not that it's not feasible, there's a personality problem there, and it's one has to fight the other. And the RM is not cooperating on anything. They didn't cooperate with me. I never got a phone call. There's no communication. It's just the way they operate. I've got numerous things here that I could go over, but I haven't got the time. You won't give me the time, thank you. But there's just too much, and there's too much bad blood. We need one community, one government, one body making the decisions, not two, not one trying to cut the other one off at the knees. I'll quit early and take a time out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Roy. Next, we have John Panter.
Thank you. John Panter, 15 Hogan Place, Emerald Park. Just so you know, my wife writes her stuff. I write my stuff. I don't know what she was going to say. She doesn't know what I'm going to say. But I am in full support of White City's annexation proposal. I'm also old enough to remember the Marx Brothers. and I don't mean Carl, I mean Groucho and his brothers. There's a story that Groucho was visiting England, staying with an English family, and they took him to a cricket match. And after they'd been sitting in the stands for 2 or 3 hours, the Englishman turned to Groucho and said, "What do you think of cricket?" And Groucho said, "Cricket, it's an interesting game. When does it start?" And I thought of that story again when the first time I drove down Ram Avenue and I saw the billboard, "Cooperation, not annexation." I thought there's an interesting concept, cooperation, when does it start? Does anyone in this room seriously think that if White City was to withdraw its application tomorrow, that suddenly the dawning of the age of Aquarius would break out, there would be peace, harmony, and a spirit of cooperation suddenly beginning? I don't think so. Last week, there was a letter to the editor over the signature of Mitch Huber, and I wanted to digress briefly here. I don't think in 7 years I've ever written an unkind word about Mitch Huber. Certainly he hasn't called me to disagree. And if this process isn't completed before the next municipal election, I'll probably end up voting for Mitch, assuming there's somebody who runs against him. But then this week there was another letter in the White City Emerald Park Community Newsletter. And frankly, the letters were kind of snotty, if that's not an unparliamentary word to use. And we've heard a bit of snottiness on both sides of the debate here tonight. But if the snottiness is supposed to usher in an era of mutual cooperation, then cooperation is a dead duck even before it learns to fly. 5 or 6 years ago, the amalgamation of White City and Emerald Park was the farthest thing from my mind. I figured a bit of tinkering with division boundaries would do the trick to increase representation for Emerald Park. And on at least 3 occasions, I've watched the councillor for the then division, I think it was Division 4, he's here tonight, plead with his fellow councillors for increased representation for Emerald Park. I thought there was going to be an interesting debate on that issue, but there wasn't. Frankly, the other 5 councillors put their heads down, sheepishly said, well, maybe someday, but not now. And that statement, someday, but not now, that says it all. I've seen comments on Facebook and in the letters that I've just mentioned that Emerald Park could have no representation on the White City Council, and that's balderdash. When the White City Council steps down after the amalgamation, there will be a municipal election for a new council. I'm predicting here and now that there will be at least a dozen candidates for the 6 councillor spots. They will be from Emerald Park, they'll be from White City, and they'll be from neither, perhaps farther afield than those 2 communities. And in our collective wisdom, we will choose the best 6 candidates, regardless of where they live, and we will have a council that truly reflects all of our interests in the new blended community. I don't want a division system where I will never have more than 1 representative on council, particularly when none of the other 5 councillors live in Emerald Park. I want to take part in an election for all 6 councillors, not just one of them. And I have no fear whatsoever that the new council won't reflect my interests as well as the interests of any other resident. I'm not interested in the old grudges, the old dirty laundry, the old history lessons. I don't care about the past. I want to go forward into the future as an urban, unified community. So as a result, I am fully in support of White City's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, John. The next people we have up are Anita and Michael Bodie. Are you here tonight? Anita and Michael? All right. Going once, going twice. All right. The next person is Barry Pentiluk.
Good evening, I'm Barry Peneluk, and my wife and I live on 20 Gemstone Place in Emerald Park. We vote against the White City annexation of 23 and a half quarters. Financially, we think White City is one bad decision away from declaring bankruptcy. As per the financial disclosures, in my opinion, if you go to the 2018 budget, the town has exceeded their debt limit for years in the past, and they expect to exceed it in the foreseeable future. And that's a limit that the Municipal Act controls. Why would Emerald Park residents and the communities want to take on that risk? White City debt is increasing to $11,400,000 by 2020 from $6,300,000 in 2018. White City operating costs are going up by 10.28% in 2019, and yet they're only increased the taxes by 2.78%. So where is that money coming from to cover off the rest of the operating costs? White City needs the Emerald Park tax revenue, or they will be in breach of debt covenants, and that's in the 25-year plan. If you reference some of the footnotes, that's indicated very clearly. White City has not disclosed financial projections that are real. The 25-year plan, as indicated by the speaker earlier, is a generic plan. What's going to happen to us in the next 5 years financially? I'm sure you can project that, but you have not released any of that to the taxpayers of White City or Emerald Park. Property tax costs will increase immediately to cover the $16 to $32 million tax loss compensation. We haven't had any annexation in the province where there wasn't tax loss compensation. And yet White City has not allowed for that or is not disclosing that to the taxpayers. White City water costs are higher. In my case, my bill is going to increase to about $4,000 a year from what I'm paying Emerald Park. White City's water upgrades and other capital costs, if the annexation goes through, will be borne by the Emerald Park taxpayers as well as the White City taxpayers. I noticed that the White City utility service costs are jumping to $5.4 million from $3.4 million in 2019. Who's paying that increase, if not the taxpayers? White City real estate listings clearly speak to White City governance, the service, and the resident satisfaction. You have over 60 White City homes listed, and you have a mere 8 Emerald Park homes listed. Why is that? Higher cost of living, $500 a month water bills equals what? Landscape degradation and probably reducing property values over time. Reduced White City services, no weekly garbage pickup, water shortages and rationing, and escalating water costs, even though you did drop your rates January 1 as part of the annexation apple you're throwing out. White City governance and the management of assets. White City has sold assets to pay for infrastructure such as the water utility. The council, in my opinion, has not really listened to their taxpayer base. Do taxpayers in White City want a big city and live a big city life? Why did they move out here? White City development planning over the years has resulted in scattered residential and basically no commercial area at all allowed for. They had a beautiful area along Highway 48 where business wants traffic. That land was all zoned residential and it's gone. White City just experienced 4 years of water shortages and did not halt development. Budgeting for a Fort Town office, $5 million. The annexation attempt that's occurring now is probably estimated to cost between $500,000 and $800,000 in consulting and legal fees to the taxpayers of White City.
Thank you, Barry, for your contributions today. The next person up is Murray Wright.
Hello, my name is Reverend Murray Wright. I live at 50 Emerald Ridge East, White City, Saskatchewan. About 2 years ago, we moved into White City with my wife and our children. And in that time, I have bought in to White City. It's come to be a place that I'm proud to raise my children in. However, I've also heard a lot of fighting between the RM and White City. I'm reminded of a parable that Jesus once said. It's a Good Samaritan. Basically, a person was beaten up and left for dead. Two people walked by him and could care less. One person, a Samaritan who was his enemy, stopped down to help him out. He didn't care about the color of his skin or where he lived. He saw a person in need and offered help. And so I'm in favor of the one community, one voice, because I want to be able to say to my daughter and to my son, when they ask me, how am I a good Samaritan to my neighbors? And I want to say I'm supporting them as best as I believe possible. I'm excited about a unified city government. I'm excited about future amenities like a high school and a community center that my wife and I were just talking about today. And I believe we can have these as the next city in Saskatchewan. Like I said, I have 2 children. One of them plays on the Cobra soccer team. And on that team, there are children from Emerald Park in White City, and they don't know that there's a boundary. To them, it's just their friends that dad has to drive them to have a play date. In fact, when I moved out here, I didn't even know there was a boundary or a fence line until, because I'm a part of the fire department and I'm a medical first responder and I'm also a paramedic, I was driving to a place in need, a fire in Emerald Park. And we passed by the sign and I said, whoa, that must be a subdivision of White City. They said, oh, no. That's 2 communities. I taught my daughter to be a good Samaritan to her teammates and to the opposition. So they play together in the school playgrounds and they come over to our house and trample all over my newly planted flowers. And like I said, there's going to be a day when she comes to me and says, Daddy, how have you been a good Samaritan? And on that day, I'll proudly look her in the face and I'll say, Natiana, I served on the fire department. I served all in need, regardless of the color of their skin or where they live. Whether that's on the fire department or as a first responder. I've coached soccer. But I'll also proudly be able to stand up and tell her that I've supported the One Community, One Voice initiative because I too want the best for my neighbors. All my neighbors here present today and those who are unable to make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Murray, for your contribution. The next person we have up is Cal Knowles.
Sorry, I don't feel comfortable with my back. And Padre, where'd you go? I expect you to give me a 1-minute warning when I'm out of time, and I expect you to be honest. So my name is Cal Knowles, And for the last 6 years, my wife and I have lived on Park Meadows Road, and I hope we're going to live there for some time to come. I am opposed to the annexation. For most of my working life, I was trained to deal with disputes on not only home soil, but abroad, and I did that. I was required to spend long periods of time separated from my home and my family, either for training for a deployment or being deployed. And I was deployed into environments that I can guarantee you were less than welcoming. By my choice, I made sacrifices for the well-being of my family and my fellow Canadians. I was and always will be in my heart a soldier. Therefore, it is my nature to be opposed to takeovers. In 28 years, Louise and I were posted 6 times across the country. Every time I pleaded with her, let's buy an acreage. It wasn't until I retired in 2013 that we could finally afford to do it, and we moved into what we believed was the perfect location and the perfect community. And now I'm starting to feel threatened. I see this as a big gamble, and where my money is concerned, I want to be placing my bets. I see that, to me, the town has everything to gain, nothing to lose, and I have everything to lose, my home and my dream. I'm going to be on a fixed retirement income soon, and I can't afford a large increase in expenses or being forced to connect to town water and sewer. I believe that tax loss compensation will have to be provided to the RM, and to me the most likely source is going to be coming from the taxpayers, of which I would be one. From a previous town meeting, we were told that our taxes would actually decrease by 3% in the country residential area. Tonight I hear it's going to decrease by 3.9%. I'm sorry, but I'm very, very skeptical about that. I will be a believer when I hear that from financial experts that are contracted by the RM. How does White City assess and calculate property tax? I've heard that you do not use the same assessment formula as the RM, and that my taxes may be based on frontage. I'm probably hooped right there, as I live on a corner lot acreage. I've heard that I will be responsible to pay for road maintenance and improvements based on my frontage. Again, I'm hooped. Even if my taxes don't increase, how are you going to provide me the same level of service that I'm getting now from the RM? And case in point, what about plowing my road in the wintertime? Does White City have enough equipment and operators right now to do all the roads that you're going to be responsible for, the roads and streets? If not, are my taxes going to increase so that you are able to obtain those resources? Because right now the RM has ample resources, and they're included in my current taxes. Also, my experience with the RM is when it snows, my road is plowed within 2 hours. You've told me in the past that I'll be grandfathered regarding hookup to town water and sewer, but if I don't elect to do so, that my next owner, 1 minute, thank you, my next owner will be obligated to do so. My estimation, that's $30,000 to $40,000. So if I don't do it, my property value just dropped by $30,000 or $40,000. Boy, I've got more points here. I guess I'm going to sum up. I'd like to know, do you have the expertise and capacity to govern and manage developed areas that will near develop your population and impose an immediate demand for increased infrastructure? Again, I'm skeptical. What I would like to see, I've got some proposals here and I don't have time to go through all of them, but what I would like to see is that there be an open public forum debate between the RM and White City, so all of us here can make a more informed decision and give us the right to vote on it, not being taken in. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal, and thank you everybody for telling him it was his 5 minutes. I appreciate it. Next up is Louise Knowles.
Wife of the fourth speaker. Good evening, council members and audience. I'm Louise Knowles. Cal and I purchased an acreage on Park Meadows Road 6 years ago when we made the decision to move out of the city and live in a country residence, a community of acreages, a perfect setting for our future retirement. I am opposed to the town of White City annexation of 23.5 quarters of the RM Edenwald land, of the businesses in the RM, and of some residences in the RM, including us and our neighborhood. At the core of my opposition is my belief that the annexation of businesses and of residents already formed is morally wrong and financially prohibitive. Now, my personal inner feelings, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not bear false witness, but thou shalt not covet. If you are a believer, these are just a few of the short and common 10 commandments handed down by God to Moses more than 3,000 years ago. If you are not a person of faith, you still have to agree that they are general rules for life that have formed the basis for the law of the land in most countries around the world, including Canada. The definition of covet on Google is to desire wrongfully, inordinately, or without due regard to others, as to covet another's property and possessions. That sounds a lot like the precursor to the definition of annexation in Google, which is the forcible acquisition of one state or area's territory by another state or area, generally held to be an illegal act. Understandably, the town of White City has the desire to grow, to increase in size and in tax base, to add residences, and now to add businesses as well. But you don't plan to just spend the next decade working hard at that task, using the 400 empty acres that lie in waiting. No, you just want to annex what your friend and neighbor has. Developments that the RM has worked long and hard at. A community of people, a respectful group of successful businesses, and the sprinkling of acreage neighborhoods. It has taken years to develop through planning and trust and cooperation. You want us fast, and you want us for free. But we will be stuck paying compensation to one governance because we left them, and to the other governance because we joined them. Neither of which we wanted to do. How fair will that be for our retirement future? This is a democratic province. How can it be acceptable for one community constantly covet their neighbor and repeatedly threaten to annex that friend and neighbor's land and their businesses and their citizens? You are trying to annex our acreage for our tax dollars, but this is our land, our home, where we live and play. It's not an empty farmer's field waiting for development. We are people. This is our lives that you are affecting and our homes that you are threatening with countless unknowns. Many very smart people have promised us very many things tonight. So my opinion is strictly from my heart. But we do not want to carry the tax burden of annexation for the next 20 years and then be forced to pass it on to the people that we will sell our place to when we move into one of those retirement homes that are going to be built in our area. Thank you. Personally, I have the belief and faith that the town of White City and the RM of Edenwald, representing Emerald Park and businesses and surrounding acreage neighborhoods, can govern our whole area together, all of our communities, for the benefit of everyone involved. But you must stop the constant bickering, the badgering, the negativity, the mistrust, and the false accusations, and get on with the wonderful honor that you have bestowed, that we have bestowed upon you as elected officials, that of building our whole community. The community of cooperation would be a great new name. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Thank you, Louise. Next, we have Stephen King.
Thank you. My name's Stephen King. My address is 48 Fairway Crescent. My name's Stephen King. I live at 48 Fairway Crescent in White City. I've worked in Emerald Park for 9 years and lived in White City for 6.5. In that time, the only real example of cooperation I can cite is the wastewater treatment plant that was recently completed. It's important to note, however, that both parties had the gun to their head because further development was stopped unless this was done. Now there's a fight over where the water should go, which jeopardizes the future of the golf course. It's more about competition than cooperation, and we're way past finding a way to play nice together. One vote equals one vote, except here. The urban population of Emerald Park is grossly underrepresented on council. Then, because White City and Emerald Park share borders, White City residents have 0 vote on RM development, and EP residents have 0 vote on White City development. That means one government could build whatever they wanted in the other's backyard with virtually no electoral consequence. That should not be acceptable to anyone. This is very concerning, considering the level of protest that was required to stop the apartment complex and the level of a protest that was unsuccessful preventing the nursing home. We need one vision for the area, and one community is the only way to achieve that. For years, the RM has been building subdivisions right on the border of White City, saying they want the benefits of being in the town without any financial obligation. They continue this practice today, having subdivisions pop up on all sides of White City. There does not appear to be any plan, just developers who want to use the infrastructure for as low a price as possible. Everyone seems interested in gaining the value a larger community will bring without sharing the cost. It then becomes a competition between the town and the RM who will give up the most to get the development. Now, the town's saying you can't have it both ways, gain the value of proximity while refusing to contribute financially. And this lack of long-term vision means residents will live in fear of what might be developed around them, despite the initial sale of quiet country living. With the area under one authority, there will be one plan. We've seen firsthand that 2 groups with different objectives who don't get along cannot jointly manage a geographic area. Remember, this does not belong to the RM or the town, it belongs to the residents, and we get to choose who and how it's managed. It's time we all have a say in our future here. I've been told that originally, White City did not want to develop commercial land, but the RM did it anyways, despite the wishes of the people at the time. Now, there's no rocket science here. It worked because we're 10 minutes out of Regina. Because of this, the RM has been able to secure sizable reserves and will continue to develop land and generate above-average revenues to maintain its viability. And what have they been doing with that money? This is now a significant urban area and should fall under the guidelines of urban municipalities. The RM should now fulfill their obligation, as rural municipalities have done for over 100 years, and turn control over to the people. The challenge I see of any other solution is the governance model. White City residents would not accept a model that did not reflect an equal vote like they currently have. That would put urban residents in the majority, which I would think would be unacceptable to rural residents. The most viable solution is to have the 2 governing bodies and enough property assigned to the town of White City so they don't have to do this again for 25 years. Maybe by then they'll both forget why they were fighting and work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Next, we have Lauren Ozibko.
I guess those that are speaking in favor are speaking to the panel and those that are against are speaking to the residents. And I think it's the residents that should be the ones that get to decide what happens. My name is Lauren Ozepko, and I live at 2 Gemstone Place in Emerald Park with my wife Shirley. We've lived there for 28 years. I am opposed to the annexation. My understanding is that White City Council passed a resolution at their council meeting in May of 2007 to not proceed with any future annexation attempts without a petition presented to White City by Emerald Park residents. To have White City Council rescind this resolution without any petition from Emerald Park, along with a total lack of consultation from Emerald Park residents before standing in front of TV cameras, making bold statements and plans is very concerning and disturbing. White City states that a survey conducted by the town showed a response of some 70% in favor of annexation. This is one of their grounds for initiating annexation. I question the survey and the results. I have discussed this with a White City Council member. I did not receive a survey questionnaire. Neighbors around me did not receive a questionnaire. Friends that live in Emerald Park did not receive a questionnaire. Was the survey questionnaire delivered selectively to areas where a positive response was going to be received? If I have talked to 20 residents, and actually it's 46 households, surely one individual would acknowledge that they got a White City questionnaire. Of the 46 homes that my neighbor and I walked and door-to-door knocked to ask to sign a petition, 95% of those 46 houses signed no. I am very happy with the services provided to me by the RM of Edenwald. I reviewed my RM portion of taxes, and unlike the proposal going up 2% per year and we're getting a hell of a deal, from 2009 to 2018, my taxes went down $21, not up 2% every year. The decision by the RM Council to provide water to its residents, while I am sure was a difficult decision, has proven to be cost-saving to Emerald Park residents. White City Council decided to get out of the water utility, choosing to partner with Sask Water. I'm here from the government, trust me, I'll help you. I have calculated my water bill for 2017 based on actual usage. Under White City utility rates, I would have paid 73% more, $1,831 more. I realized in January, White City residents finally got a break. You've been screwed so long, they finally give you a break. My bill would still be up 43%, so you're still getting screwed. Excuse my language. Perhaps the right decision was the one done by the RM of Edenwald. Oh, by the way, we don't have any representation on the RM. But they made a decision that they would develop, build, and maintain control of their own water. Your elected 6 representatives voted to give it to the government and screw you for years on rates and continue to get that way. A Wikipedia search of White City. Oh, it's not respectful to say screwed. I'm sorry. I apologize, young lady. I apologize to the crowd, I really do. A Wikipedia search, well, this might not be respectful either. A Wikipedia search of White City lists services, and I quote, White City is serviced by a library and a Canada Post Office. A Wikipedia search of Emerald Park, quote, there are 130 businesses located in and around Emerald Park, employing approximately 1,800 people. Grocery stores, hardware stores, pharmacies, clothing, retail stores, restaurants serve residents and industrial companies, and specialty farm retailers and manufacturers lead the way in innovation and forward thinking, end of quote. This certainly, I see it, this certainly looks like a real valid reason for annexation. Let's take a library and a post office versus 1,300 businesses. I'm sorry, it was 130 businesses. White City consultants, and you are spending a lot of money on them, surely would have updated the website. Or is this an oversight? Is it better in the public eye to not list any businesses rather than list only 1 or 2? White City became a hamlet in '58, a village in '67. Listing only 1 or 2 businesses may not look favorable on past or present White City Council. To only have 2 versus 130. I do not agree with the annexation proposal, concerned citizen, taxpayer, and resident of Saskatchewan. Thank you.
have a question? Yes? No? Okay. Thank you, Lauren. The reason I'm turning the mic around is because today there are proposals that are being presented to the committee, but also for a second reason. Not everybody is comfortable with public speaking. And so I'm turning it around so everybody has the opportunity to just leave it be so that they can actually concentrate on what they have to say rather than being nervous in front of a crowd, okay? And plus you can see the time. So. And next we have Brian Ferguson.
And I was prepared to face the crowd. So, Brian Ferguson, I've been a resident of White City for over 20 years. Pardon? Oh, yeah, I'm on Capitol Place, 8 Capitol Place. Since I've been here in the 20 years, one of the first things that struck me was the single broader community of Emerald Park and White City was not under single management or government. There were separate councils, administrations, garbage collection, water supply, etc., all the things necessary in managing infrastructure and services for our community. As a professional accountant with a long history of identifying and driving out waste and cost in the interest of efficiency and effectiveness, this seemed crazy to me and there must be a better way. I fully support the boundary alteration initiative announced by the town of White City, not only to address some of the shortcomings, but to move the combined community forward in a positive direction of progress. A larger combined community with a common shared government focused on urban residents and urban issues would be, in my opinion, a great benefit to both urban and rural residents. Urban residents of White City and Emerald Park would be better served by a single unified government focused on its needs, while rural residents of the RM would find their council and administration unencumbered by urban issues and constraints, allowing them to better focus on rural issues. The town of White City and the RM would also spend less time dealing, negotiating, and arguing with each other, and both would have greater ability to focus on their core issues. The combined community would also, in my opinion, not only result in greater consistency throughout the community in bylaws, such as bylaws, but also allow for greater leverage of shared services, improved purchasing power, and potentially lower costs. In my discussions with Emerald Park residents, not only since White City's current annexation proposal was announced, but also prior, those residents almost universally state one or more of the following. Emerald Park has one representative on the RM Council out of 7, and they don't feel they're being properly represented. The RM, by their own numbers, states the population of Emerald Park in 2016 was approximately 1,700, or 38% of the RM's total population. Yet Emerald Park representation on council's 14%, or a whopping 17% of the REVIS excluded from the calculation. The RM Council has had years to address this issue and has consistently chosen to ignore it. There's other issues here, but they've already been covered by others, so I'm going to skip through them. RM Council meetings are generally held during the day, sending a clear signal to Emerald Park and other residents with full-time jobs the RM's really not that interested in hearing from them or having them sit on council. Even their May Coffee with Council session last week to solicit concerns about annexation was held at a time inconvenient for many residents working full-time jobs. There's obstructions and roadblocks that the White City administration and council runs into. There's a whole bunch of cooperation statements, which quite frankly are marketing, and that's about it. The boundary alteration process, speaking to covet, the boundary alteration process is a legal process specifically defined by the government as the only one that a town like White City can use to grow. So it's a legal process. And White City's using it for the purpose for which it was designed. I think one of the things that I want to point out before I leave this is, right now White City is surrounded, essentially an island surrounded by the RM. The town is growing at a rate, if you look at the numbers, roughly 7 times the rate at which the RM population is growing. There are no separate numbers that are pulled out for Emerald Park. But at 7 times growth, it won't be long before Emerald Park is surrounded by White City. And the Emerald Park, that essentially flips the table. And so the annexation issue becomes one that, in my mind, is inevitable, where Emerald Park residents are going to stick up their hand and say, wait a minute, we want to be part of White City. So before leaving full-time employment a few years ago, I spent 22 years as a senior executive. But In the IT services business, one thing that I learned is that IT departments in organizations are quite often not well understood and not well managed. The reason that they outsource it is to get better service. They allow people to focus on their issues. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Urban residents should be looked after and elect urban councils. They shouldn't be managed by rural ones. So I'm pleased to see that White City has invested in planning. I look forward to seeing that, and I look forward to seeing the fruition of that with the SMB improving this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Next up, we have Wayne Joyce. No, sorry. Thank you.
My name is Wayne Joyce. My wife Cheryl and I live at 10 Nelson Place in Emerald Park, and we are violently, vehemently opposed to said annexation. We're opposed that they would, the council of, and the mayor, council and administration would launch an attack on our home and our community. It was our choice to purchase in Emerald Park, our community. It was our choice not to build elsewhere, and we looked in lots of places. One of the things that we haven't done is talk about what people moved out here for. All the surveys I've looked at said the top two reasons, the small town feel and it's quiet. I don't think anybody moved out here to say, I'm moving out of the city to move into a city to have the same sort of lifestyle I had in the city. So, the document that was presented in May of last year, I call the White City Manifesto. It was their combined wisdom that they would tell us what is the best for us going forward. In most situations, if you were going to do this, if I was going to do this, I would be consulting with those people who are affected by it. It would be probably a long process, but I wouldn't come in and say, here's the highway, do it my way, or take a hike. During the preceding months to notification, I know that the town didn't talk to the RM. I know the town didn't talk to residents, either in the annexed areas, proposed annexed areas, or even in their own community. Does their community even want it? Or just a select few on council? The town boasts, the town has become the service center for a much larger population than resides within its borders. In addition to inequities related to revenues and overuse, the town is unable to plan and manage public facilities and other infrastructure. Having lived here for 20 years, I certainly do not understand where all the amenities that they say that outsiders are using. I should also remind everybody that as long as I've been aware, the RM through the years has provided recreation grants to the town. There has never been a reciprocal grant for a project in the RM. Exceptional growth. Well, I used to be a number cruncher. I can do math 6 ways from Sunday. But if I start with a small number, 100, and I grow to 200, I've had a 100% growth rate. But I'm still not very big. So talking about percentages of growth and how you're going to grow this fast, et cetera, is a fool's game in the end. What's happening in the economy? What is coming down the road that would say this 22,000, 38,000, 55,000 population is going to happen? When they say they don't have land for commercial development, again, we've heard the 1958 council and the 1984 one that didn't want certain commercial things. Councils have made a conscious, and I'm going to say an educated, decision-making process to say they don't want it. Even more recently, development along Highway 48. Some commercial could have occurred. I should have written a 2-pager, not a 22-pager. This proposal, in my mind, and this is the 4th one that I've been around for, has affected the communities in the most negative way possible, where people are not communicating with people from the other community, or they're saying people in one community are stupid, or on and on it goes. That is not the way to go forward. The whole idea, in my mind, my wife's mind, is the White City proposition is going down the wrong path. And finally, in all the studies they had, and I was going to bring them up because it's a lot, the one statement that I do concur with in the report, White City is not an integrated full-service growth community. Annexing Great Plains Industrial, Park Meadows, Meadow Ridge,
Thank you, Wayne. Next up, we have Scott Moskal.
I'll try to appease those that have a problem with this. I have no problem speaking to the group here as well. Good evening, everyone. My name's Scott Moskal. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy evenings to attend this meeting tonight. I'm a resident in White City, 54 Emerald Ridge East, and I'm also on council for White City. When my wife and I first moved out here in 2011, I posted to Facebook saying that we are now new proud homeowners in Emerald Park. I did not understand the difference between White City and Emerald Park at that time. I sure do now. A short 2 months after being welcomed to this community, our first daughter was born. A quick 2 years later passed, and our second daughter was born. A short while later, an elementary school was built very close to where we have decided to build our forever home. This was exciting. The community was and still is growing. We moved out here with the expectation that this was a small community. However, this was changing. I started reviewing meeting minutes and attending council meetings. I attended nearly every council meeting in White City for well over a year before deciding to run for council and being elected in October of 2016. Through my first year of council, it became apparent to me that cooperation between the two municipalities was a difficult situation. I began to realize that we have competing strategic visions and directions. White City was focused solely on urban issues, while the RM was balancing broad urban and rural issues together. In January of 2018, the RM of Edenwold withdrew from the White Butte Regional Planning Committee. We've heard this several times. White City asked the RM to reconsider, but was later advised that they were sticking to their decision. This was the last straw after pulling out of all other joint initiatives. In April of 2018, the town commissioned an independent consultant to conduct a survey to understand what the needs, concerns, and issues were within the town and the surrounding communities. Out of the many questions asked, there was a question about amalgamation. The feedback on this question alone was a clear mandate from our ratepayers and some of those people in the surrounding communities to do what was needed to bring together these separated communities. This information, coupled with the future growth study presented in May of 2018, which you guys have seen in summary here tonight, formed the proposal that brings us all here tonight. The only option that remained to bring these communities together is boundary alteration. Refer to it as you may, annexation, amalgamation, boundary alteration, it's all the same process with the same result. We have become two divided communities and have reached a level of competition that is unhealthy and counterproductive to each municipality. The future is unwritten and will be all of ours to contribute to and have a say to. The town has taken the necessary steps to understand the future, and therefore this proposal exists today. History is equally important. We need to understand and learn from that history. However, let's move forward together progressively as one united community. No more he said, she said. Our children go to school together. They play hockey together. They dance together, play ball or soccer. How is it even possible that within our small communities, some kids could live on the same street or next street, but be from different municipalities? How do we explain this to our children? We have a strong mandate from these communities, even from the silent majority. It is that they are in favor of this proposal. We currently have a total of 891 signed letters in favor of becoming one community, and undoubtedly more to come after tonight. The town of White City has gone to great lengths to ensure that this proposal will work with most. We will never please everyone. I have learned this the hard way on council. However, I do believe that we have made every effort to make this work for as many people as possible. Rapid growth is a great problem to have if it is coordinated, planned appropriately, and controlled in a fashion that will be a benefit to the entire community, not as two separate entities competing against one another. Just say no to the status quo. We're stronger together. It is time.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we have Stan Kapner-Hurst. You're actually speaking to these guys because you're making a presentation. Yeah.
I'll go sideways.
You go sideways. Good stuff.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stan Kapner-Hurst. I'm a resident of 15 Park Meadows and Division 2 councillor in the RM of Edenwald.
Do you want me to hold that for you?
No, I'm fine.
I'm just worried about your hand.
You took up some of my time. I would like to voice my concerns in opposition to this annexation proposal. An annexation of this scale will create winners and losers and is a costly approach that has already proven to divide the community. It should be the last step rather than the opening pitch. I tend to look at things in the view of how this will impact my bottom line. Will I be paying more taxes or less? How will my services be affected? I'm afraid I do not see an honest answer to this question, and the uncertainty is what makes me nervous. What I see instead are several issues of great concern to me and my neighbors in the RM of Edenwald. I'm particularly concerned about the issues of tax loss compensation and taxes. Tax loss compensation is a payment from the annexing municipality to the municipality losing the tax base. Precedents locally and throughout the province show that tax loss compensation is always paid as part of the boundary alteration. White City's own financial impact assessment indicates that there is a need to consider tax loss compensation, stating that analysis is underway to determine what a reasonable compensation amount to the RM should be, and that the analysis will be completed by July. This indicates that they have no intent to negotiate a fair amount with the RM and that they intend to move forward with their annexation proposal, regardless of the feedback received at this public hearing. In the absence of any estimate amount of tax loss compensation, my neighbors and I are left wondering what that number will be. As a starting point, we can look at recent boundary alterations that the RM has been involved in 2015, the RM voluntarily gave, my hand's working real good, isn't it? Approximately 400 acres to the town to accommodate their town center. The tax loss paid to the RM was 15 times total taxes assessed and was paid in addition to another financial obligations related to drainage and road construction projects. It is worth noting that these obligations have yet to be met on the part of the town. In 2015, Belgoni paid 22.5 times the total tax assessed to the RM. Looking elsewhere in the province, tax loss compensation of 12 times for Yorkton in 2012, 15 times in Swift Current 2012, and Martinsville paid the RM of Cormant Park 22.5 times in 2018. The current assessment of the proposed land is approximately $2 million. If we multiply that by 12 times, that's 24 million. If we multiply it by 15 times, that's 30 million. If we multiply it by 22.5 times, that's $45 million. These numbers are estimates and may not have taken into consideration utilities, tangible assets, okay, and reserve land. Whatever the case, doubting debt. Anyway, I guess I got to move forward. My second one was taxes, and I see that, I'll just read a little bit. White City is planning to build a recreation center of $80 million, $3 million for a man-made lake, $5 million for a new town center. These costs are staggering, okay? In closing, I'll add, it says, if the proposed annexation occurs, but developed commercial and industrial lands are not included in the transfer, EI, only developed residential lands are included, it is estimated the town will see an increase of approximately 10% in tax rates in year one. Okay. Also, quote from them is, further quote, the transfer of developed commercial and industrial lands from the RM to the town are pivotal to the financial viability of the White City. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Next up is Rebecca Otichu. Sorry, you can tell us how you say it.
Rebecca Utitoju. And your address? 46 Stardust Bay in Garden of Eden Estate. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name, I have already mentioned. I'm a pastor here in town as well with my husband, and I also sit on town council. My husband, James, and I are originally from Nigeria. James came in 30 years ago as a student because he wanted to further his education, and I joined him 2 years after. We moved to Regina in 1992 and later decided that Canada would be a better place for us to raise our 4 sons. We started the process that took about 2 years for us to bring them, and at that time they were ages 17, 15, 13, and 11. Today all married and we have grandchildren. We moved to White City, and the very reason we moved to White City, as I share all the time, is because of the church. And it's still the reason why we are here. But as soon as we move into this community, we discover that to be a part of the church is also to be a part of the community. And based on that, sometime in 2005, when there was a celebration of 100 years of the province, I was part of that committee. We had an amazing event that all the residents enjoyed. After that, I remember telling my husband that, you know, this is a great community. I would like to sit on council one day. 2012 became a reality for me. So living in this community and being part of a committee that planned that event years ago, and also being in town, on town council, actually makes this become home for me, including the church that brought me here. A place where we come to and feel like a community. Being one community is not just something that is out of the ordinary. It's true. We are two different communities at this time, but it's also time for us to become one. When we moved in, unbeknown to me, was that one of our sons will also move back into this community. And I'm very sure many of you experienced that. They also wanted a place that is small and safe. And I remember the first day that I picked up our grandson and granddaughter from school, because they used to drive 1 hour to go back home. We got home within 5 minutes, and my grandson turned to me and said, "Mama Agba," which is grandma in our language, "are we home already?" I said, "Yes, we are home." So you could see for this little boy that this also became home. And for me, my grandchildren that are now in this community, I hope they will be able to go to high school in this community. And to make it possible, we need to become one, because in one, we are strong. In being one, we are strong. So when we decided on this annexation, as we call it, it became very exciting as well. And I also see it as a blessing, because it's a place of peace for my grandchildren, and also for them to enjoy unity and peace with their neighbors. I know, coming from a place like Nigeria or a third world country where we talk about peace and unity and being in a safe place out of our minds, which is usually not the reality all the time, I know that firsthand we have experienced lack of peace even while there. But at the same time, I want that peace even for my grandchildren as well. We do have library that we share as a community. We have the community center that we also share. But amazingly, do you know that the Emerald Park residents do not have the opportunity to get discount because they do not belong as one community? That does not sound real to me. So we need to build a community where we feel one. When we talk about the town center, we will see that it is also very important, because many people live their life here and we want them to stay here. Many children grew up here, we want them to be able to stay here, and this is the reason why. So I hope we will all consider knowing that together we stand strong, and this is the right time for us to become a community.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up, we had Bruce Evans, but he's going to be part of the closing remarks, so we're just going to skip him for now. Next, we have Reeve Mitchell-Huber from Rural Municipality of Edenwald, number 158.
Speak to the crowd. Good evening, everybody. In my official response, first of all, my name is Mitch Huber. I am the Reeve of the Arm of Edenwald. Pardon me? My address is box 444, Balgony. It's my pleasure to address you tonight. It's a complicated issue, it's a tough topic, and I can't do it in 5 minutes. In my official response to the town, I've presented earlier today. It was an 8-page response. I was going to speak to it tonight, but I feel it's more important to just basically speak off the cuff. We are not here to hold the town of White City back. We are not here to hold them back in any way, shape, or form. What we are here for is to protect our interest. We have developed the Emerald Park area and surrounding communities. We are proud of what we've developed, and we stand behind our decisions we've made. We've made mistakes over the years, absolutely. We've been at odds over the years, absolutely. But we're talking about some development tonight about White City and Emerald Park. If you broaden it out a little bit, we've got development around Pilot Butte, we've got development around Balgony. We've got issues all over. What the ARM has tried to do over many generations of councils, long before I was there, is take advantage of a niche situation. We've got access with the #1 highway. We're 10 miles out of, or 5 miles out of Regina. There was an opportunity there. The RM, I learned when I early on in my council years to try your best to diversify a tax base. That's what the RM of Edenwald's done. We've got agricultural, we've got commercial, we've got industrial, we've got residential, we've got country residential, all aspects of development. We've got our own infrastructures, we've got our water. Currently, we're completing our sewer, the joint project with the town. What I'm trying to say here tonight is it's too bad that we have to be at odds with one group of people. I don't know how to resolve that, but I think a combined community, there's room for everybody to grow, is what I'm saying tonight. But for us to walk away from developed lands, they're not for sale. That's all I need tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Mitchell Huber. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up is Ray Orp from the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to lend our voice to this important public meeting. My name is Ray Orb, and I'm president of the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, known as SARM, and I live at 116 Stewart Street in Cupar, Saskatchewan. SARM has been the voice of rural Saskatchewan for over 100 years. We represent all of the 296 rural municipalities. Our smallest RM serves under 80 residents, and our largest over 8,000 residents. We are vast and we are diverse, and each RM is unique in opportunities and challenge. SARM is here to support our collective membership and best serve our rural municipalities in being autonomous, sustainable, and successful. And we believe in the principles of cooperation and collaboration to achieve that goal. In that spirit, on behalf of the RMs in the province and the RMs that provided a letter of support, we had 95 rural municipalities do that. We have a letter of support to the RM of Edenwald. SARM would like to express our concern with the town's proposed annexation involving the RM of Edenwald. So in 2015, the government of Saskatchewan released the principles for financial settlements between municipalities for boundary alterations. And these principles were developed in collaboration with SARM and SUMA. These voluntary principles are intended to guide annexation discussions between municipalities and the decision-making process of the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. Prior to the release of these principles, there were serious concerns among RMs, particularly those bordering. The concerns were related to the rights of some municipalities and others to annex land at a very small cost and then not use the land for many years. SARM and SUMA worked together to get a more holistic view of the annexation compensation framework at that time. And once better understood, SARM lobbied the provincial government to look at the current framework and make some changes to ensure that the process is fair and transparent. In 2015, SUMA, SARM, and the Ministry of Government Relations developed principles to guide the annexation process between municipalities, and once applications went into the SMB for a ruling, the then Minister of Government Relations announced that on the principles at the SARM 2015 midterm convention, and SARM noted to our members that we'd be looking for feedback on the principles within 2 years, which would provide municipalities, the SMB, and the provincial government time to utilize the principles. These principles are currently being sent out on request to RMs going through the annexation process and are also housed on the Ministry of Government Relations website. SARM surveyed members that some saw some form of boundary alteration in 2015, 16, 17, and 2018, asking them if they used the principles and that they would be willing to share the details about their experiences using the principles. The feedback we received has prompted us to ask the Ministry of Government Relations to reconvene the Joint Working Committee and to reevaluate, if necessary, update and re-communicate the principles. So the principles were developed by SARM Suma and the province to facilitate discussions between municipalities on the need for annexing lands, as well as for compensation for those lands being annexed. And these are voluntary principles that we hope municipalities would employ before applying to the Sask Municipal Board for determination. The principles are meant to be reviewed every 2 years after they came into effect, but not have been formally reviewed by the original working group. To date, as I mentioned, over 95 RMs in the province out of 296 have written letters of support to the Arm of Edenwald against the unwanted annexation attempt by the town of White City. SARM believes forced annexation is never the answer. SARM supports its members in regional cooperation and voluntary restructuring, but we do not support forced annexation or amalgamation. Municipalities wishing to annex land should first be required to prove a need for the land in question before discussions regarding financial settlements begin. SARM is advocating for changes that actively place a minimum of 3 years before an application for annexation denied by the SMB can be considered again. This will prevent unnecessary costs for all parties involved, including annexed municipality and an NSB. Process must be fair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ray. Next up, we have the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association Vice President, Mayor Roger Hayward.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Roger Hayward. I'm Mayor of the town of Nacum. I live at 208 2nd Street North in Nacum. SUMA, Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, represents the cities, towns, villages, resort villages, and northern municipalities in our province. Your communities, your hometowns. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. While we're always proud to support one of our members, more than anything, we appreciate the level of consultation that this meeting provides and how it serves to reinforce and the established boundary alteration process, which allows communities to grow and provide critical services by resolving disputes when an agreement can't easily be found. The town of White City is fortunate to have experienced a level of growth that it has had over the last decade, and it appears that that growth will continue. But with growth comes many challenges, not least of which is determining where growth should occur. Urban municipalities have always been the hub of their surrounding areas. They're the hometowns of Saskatchewan, where 80% of the population lives, where they shop, where they play. They're where you go to the library, where the local fire department is located, and where your kids play hockey. These services, so important to the feeling of belonging in a hometown, come with a significant cost, however. Many communities already struggle to buy with them with only the property taxes of those living within the town boundaries contributing to their operation. This is often made more difficult when these urban centers are surrounded by urban-style developments that make use of their services without contributing to their development and operations. That is why it is essential that urban municipalities have the ability to grow their tax base and continue to provide these services, which is what makes sensible planning so important. Our municipalities are by nature surrounded by rural municipalities whose primary charge is stewardship of the land. When a community grows, its only option is to add more land through boundary alterations. Boundary alteration is not an easy subject, and it's one that all too often leads to disagreements. That's why SUMO is very proud to partner with SARM to develop the boundary alteration guidelines for municipalities to refer to during negotiations, to clarify and add context to the discussions our members were having with rural municipalities when they needed to expand. The guidelines are meant to promote partnership and honest discussion, a sharing of the burdens and boons that come with development. Sadly, it doesn't always work out that way. In difficult situations, when agreements cannot be achieved, there is a process that should be followed and respected. We encourage all parties to follow and respect that process. SUMA supports the town of White City's need to grow and their need to do so in a sensible and orderly fashion, and to support the services that they are already offering to both their residents and those in surrounding municipalities. We encourage you to make this process as collaborative as possible, putting aside difference to focus on what's best for your shared residents and finding solutions that are beneficial to all. Operating transparently and in good faith is essential for all parties, as is having the SMB as a recourse should an agreement be impossible to reach otherwise. I really encourage all of you to work closely together. When we work separately, we don't grow. When we do grow and provide a great community for our residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. All right, you guys, it's almost 10 o'clock, just so you have a time check. I know you're tired. We had 8 people register at the door. So what happens when somebody is at this meeting? When somebody registers at the door, they get 2 minutes to speak. And it will be the same type of rules with the timer again, okay? And I'll just see if there's any more things we need to say about that. Again, please clearly state your name and your civic address and present the point of the proposal. This isn't a question and answer, this is presentations, okay? So after they've finished their verbal submission or their allowed time has expired, the Boundary Alteration Committee may ask questions only for clarification on the points, and the presenter may then respond. But again, keep that very short. And then after that, we'll have a few closing remarks, and then we'll be done for the night. I know you guys all have to work tomorrow too. So with that, let's start with our presentations. First, we have Grant Hamilton. Grant, are you still here? Yeah, just come up to the mic, Grant.
Thank you very much to the town of White City for organizing this meeting. I found it very enjoyable, but long. You forgot to start your clock. Just for that reason, I'm going to take 3 minutes. I thank the town for the free hamburger, and I've enjoyed the conversation. I came here mainly because of these signs saying cooperation or annexation, and I've had a clear understanding of that. I've been concerned about financial things, and I think that's been explained to me fully, so thank you very much. The main reason I'm up here is I'm just stretching my ass muscles. But we have to hold meetings like this to fully understand where both communities are coming from. I look forward, change is difficult. It's difficult for everyone. When I came here, I thought everything was rosy. But now I don't know if my taxes are going up or down. I know I want to apply to the rural municipality for my water. And I just want to conclude with a statement to the crowd. I thank you all for your comments tonight. You've spoken with intelligence, passion, and anything else you could throw in. Oh, and Murray, thank you for your service. I can see that if we can take that intelligence, that enthusiasm, and work together as one community, the future is unlimited. Thank you. And now I've got to get to the riders.
Thank Grant. Next up is David Sloan. David Sloan.
No, I'm going to give the committee my better side, so I'm going to turn it around. Good evening, folks. Good evening, folks. I'm David Sloan. I farm at Richardson, Box 12, Richardson. I guess we should take and thank White City Council for a number of things here. One, for getting us all together and being able to sweat through some of the discussions tonight. I ran for council in 1979, and I need to thank White City for that, because if it hadn't been for White City, I probably wouldn't have got elected in the RM, because at the time, the surrounding ratepayers to White City had major issues with lagoon, garbage, people traveling on their land coming out of White City. And it was interesting that that was the support that I got to take and talk about or do something about that. And I guess subsequent to that, as time went on, when I was on municipal council, we tried a number of times to sit down with White City as well as some of the other communities. And every time we got close to getting to doing some cooperation, to moving forward on something, it would be bang, we get an annexation. So I think this is, the comment's been made, the fourth time I've spoken against a White City annexation. But White City's also had numerous other annexations that the municipalities agreed to, so the White City could grow. And I guess when you look at a community, when you can start saying that this boundary line is for the community, you really don't have a community, because wherever you draw that line, take a look at the city of Regina. You saying that the city of Regina, that's the only part that's a community? Like, a community is more than just a municipality. It's the people within the municipalities that work together, within the communities that work together. And I guess one of the things that I've had experience with, and 2 minutes is up.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Next up is Ben Kuzmitz.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ben Kuzmic, councilors of both the RM and the town of White City. Jerry and I live in White City for the last 15 years. I've run Great Plains Development since 1974. Pardon? Are you going to stop the clock? 17 Christopher Place. We have developed approximately 850 lots in White City, residential 480 in the RM, as well as 300 acres of development in the RM. Initially, the town of White City, we were annexed in, but they opposed implement dealers. They opposed any kind of industrial development. We went to the ARM. We got de-annexed. We built the water treatment plant. We built the lagoons, and that's what happened. We worked closely with the school boards. Prairie Valley was significant in developing both schools. We contributed both school sites through the sale of the lots. Though the school has been significant in doing it. Mr. Sloan indicated the RM gave the town 600 acres. We weren't part of that, but we developed that within the town of White City. And we would suggest that they work together as they are working together now with the lagoon and the wastewater authority. Are we done? Oh, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. So next up, Sorry? Okay. Okay. All right, next up is Lindsay Brooks. Lindsay Brooks.
Hi, Lindsay Brooks, 1006 Kingsmere Avenue in Emerald Park. Been there for 28 years. I just want to say that the RM of Edenwald and White City, to put it bluntly, have hated each other since day one. Always have, always will. So there can't be any cooperation between them. So the bottom line is, Emerald Park residents have said, some of them, they don't want to give away their tax dollars, but they've been giving, it's estimated that the RM of Edenwald is using 20% of the tax dollars in Emerald Park, and 80% of your tax dollars is being spent on the rest of the RM. So I'm in favor of this annexation because I want 100% of my tax dollars to be spent in my neighborhood, and I want the people that I elect that live in the neighborhood to do things in my neighborhood. People who are up here saying that they're worried about the changes, there's really not going to be any changes. You're not going to notice anything. I mean, the RM of Edenwald has done a fantastic job on snow removal, always have. I mean, and if you elect a new council and the snow removal isn't as good, then you'll talk to your council and it'll be made better because you have say in it. Right now, we have no say in anything. And the RM's really not interested in, you know, I was on the rink board for 7 years. They were never interested in having anything to do with it. They're not really interested in other things that we want in Emerald Park. So if in the future, if we have a new board, then we'll have those options. And I realize both boards have made bad decisions and good decisions, but if we can elect some of them, we'll have say in all future decisions, and we'll have all our money. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next up, we have Charlyn Meldrum.
Hi, everyone. Is this getting through? We don't have much time here, 2 minutes, so I'm just going to kind of throw out a couple bullet points. First of all, pardon me? Oh, Charlyn Meldrum, 31 Palmer Crescent, Emerald Park, and I am against this proposal. With all due deference to Mayor Evans and Councillor Zorn, two gentlemen who, along with their families, moved from Emerald Park to White City. If I wanted to be part of White City, I'm free to move. I don't want this annexation process to sort of sideswipe myself and other residents who made a conscious decision to locate in a bedroom community near Regina, but we did not make a concerted decision to live in White City. Let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, something that has really been said tonight, the elephant in this room is Regina. And the baby elephant in this room is the fact that growth in this province has significantly declined over the last number of years, starting in 2015. Yes, there was a lot of growth from 2008 until 2015, but growth by and large in this province has been stagnant, other than perhaps the population in White City. But I don't think we need another city beside the town, or beside Regina. Let's face it, the growth of the city is merging towards us in the east, and perhaps in 25 years, if growth is going to continue, it's going to start to overtake us here. I want to point out something too. I mean, there's been a lot of suggestions that there's a lack of cooperation by the RM councillors over the years. Well, it takes two to tangle, and I think it's name calling on the part of the community of White City and their speakers tonight to say, well, it's all the fault of the councillors and the reeve of RM if there's lack of agreement.
Thank you, Charlyn. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Marie Bonner. Marie? Okay, Marie's back sore. Who else's back is sore? Couple people? All right. Next up is Glenn Weir. Glenn? Going once? Glenn Weir? No? All right. Our last speaker from the public presentations is Fran Passmore. Run fast, Fran.
Okay. Hi. I'm Fran Passmore. I live at 7 Capitol Place in White City. My late husband and I moved out here because he had mad car disease and he needed a big garage. And during this time, I served 5 terms.
We need your address.
Oh, 7 Capitol Place, White City. And it was during this time that I served 5 terms on White City Council. And we had a vote a few years ago, but the vote was lost, and it wasn't successful. So we agreed at that time, there was a resolution passed, as Mr. Huber said, that the town would not then, bother the people in White City and Emerald Park. They would come to us if they wanted to, look at this issue again. And I was surprised when I saw this past spring that this is what, in fact, did happen, that they chose to, reinstate this. And even though I think there certainly needs to be cooperation from the people, but I really didn't think that was a good idea. And I hope that, we can work this out. And really, I think we need more support from government. There was a saying that says we need peace, order, and good government. And I think perhaps this large group of people should perhaps go to their elected officials and say, how the hell are we going to get out of this? There shouldn't be disrespect for one another. We need to have a good cooperation between the people here, and I hope we can get there. Oh, okay. That's really what I want to say. And I hope I can keep living here because it's a good town to live in, and I'm sure White City and Emerald Park are both fine places along with the acreages. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you for giving everybody some wonderful respect tonight. Just so you know, if you wanted to speak and you didn't get a chance tonight, White City is also accepting written submissions. And we have, as of 10 p.m. on Monday, June 5th, the town had received 22 letters in opposition and 28 letters in support of the proposed boundary alteration. The town also received 3 submissions from individuals or organizations outside the new proposed boundary. So right now we have some closing comments, and then we'll send you guys off home. First, we'd like Bruce Evans. And yeah, thank Bruce Evans, Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Bruce Evans, and I'm the mayor of White City. Denise and I moved our family to this community 20 years ago, building our first home in Emerald Park. In 2006, we built our second home, this time in White City. But to us, it has always been one community. I became mayor of the town in 2006. My approach then was to encourage our council to turn the page on past disagreements with the RM and think about what is best for all our residents, business owners, and future residents. I thought we could make change, that there should be no reason why we couldn't work together. And so we tried. But as you've heard this evening, it has not worked. Our council did not come to this decision lightly. But with much consideration, White City Council reached the conclusion that it's time to unite the community under one governance model to provide enough undeveloped land for future growth and end decades of disputes. We have an opportunity as friends, neighbors, and businesses to build a strong, vibrant community where we can retire, where families can prosper, where young people can begin careers and put down roots. We have an opportunity to protect the large lot country residential lifestyle that we all value while at the same time providing the infrastructure, services, and urban amenities our residents expect. Our proposal to become one community is fundamentally about addressing the challenges of growth that will meet a modest 25-year growth plan. It is a document that lays out a vision for our future as one community. We are stronger together. Thank you for your patience, your participation, and your time this evening. And by the way, the Raptors did in fact win tonight.
Thank you, Bruce. So now any person within the public gallery who lives within the proposed boundary of the new municipality who does not wish to present a verbal presentation, because like we discussed, not everybody likes to speak in front of a crowd, or was not here, may still provide the town with a written submission of support or objection before Friday, June 7th, 2019. And I just call this meeting adjourned. The time, anybody? 10:11 p.m. Thank you.